Chapter 431. Well done! Hearing that painful roar, Lin Lin couldn't help but perk up. Taking advantage of Tiao Tiao's momentary sway and adjustment after completing his attack, he rushed forward with his shield axe, slashing down with a single blow to fill the gap in his damage output. After executing a silky combo of a charge double slash followed by a shield dash and another charge double slash, Lin Lin slid back, activating his red shield and making room for Tiao Tiao's next charged attack. Caught off guard by the flashbang, Lin Lin and Tiao Tiao seized the opportunity and unleashed a barrage of attacks on the Golden Lion. Knowing the Golden Lion's formidable nature, neither Lin Lin nor Tiao Tiao held back. Even with its sturdy frame, the Golden Lion couldn't withstand their powerful attacks, and blood continued to flow from its body. Roar! The intense pain tingled the Golden Lion's nerves. The constant beatings had instantly inflamed its rage. The powerful pumping of its heart sent blood surging through its body. Just as it was about to strike, Lin Lin charged forward, shield axe in hand. Instead of attempting to rise, it swung its sturdy forelimb sideways, striking Lin Lin hard. Lin Lin hadn't expected this creature to recover so quickly from the flashbang. Even more insidious, it didn't immediately rise, instead lying flat on the ground, attempting a surprise attack. He only had time to raise his shield to meet the Golden Lion's blow before being slammed back, slamming into the rubble like the red-armored beast before. Roar! Everything happened in a flash. Lin Lin's shared vision was plunged into darkness. Tiao Tiao roared furiously, disregarding the warning to not use scale powder unless necessary to avoid spreading the Mad Dragon disease. He exhaled a dark purple breath and entered Mad Dragon form. In this state, the Golden Lion's less than 7-meter-tall body, though insignificant, radiated heat like a small sun in the pitch-black darkness. Tiao Tiao flapped its wings and soared, then, leveraging the potential energy of gravity, the entire dragon charged towards the Golden Lion like a cannonball. Roar! The Golden Lion roared in unison, unyieldingly charging forward. The dragon and the beast battled to the edge of the volcano, grinding away even the rocks. In terms of sheer strength, Tiao Tiao was inferior to the Golden Lion, and he had little experience fighting smaller opponents. However, at the start of the battle, he and Lin Lin gained the upper hand with flash grenades, and the wounds they inflicted on the other side more than made up for it. For a moment, neither side was able to defeat the other. The two sides fought several more times, each leaving several scars on the other's body. The Golden Lion glared at Tiao Tiao with a fierce look and was about to charge again, but just as he took a step, the forelimb supporting his body suddenly gave way, and his entire body stumbled. Under the bombardment of Tiao Tiao's repeated breaths, the Golden Lion finally showed the faint signs of a Mad Dragon attack. Feeling the growing weakness in its body, the Golden Lion roared unwillingly, turned its head, and leaped away. It had given in. In fact, if it could, Tiao Tiao would not have let it go, but right now, it had more important things to do. Clatter! Tiao Tiao listened carefully for a moment, then carefully dug through the rubble with its winged claws. With a few probing and scooping, it dug out the disheveled Lin Lin from a patch of rubble on the left. Ahem! Lin Lin still felt dazed. He angrily spat out the blood foam from his mouth, unscrewed a bottle of recovery potion G, and gulped it down. Only then did he feel a little better. He shook his head vigorously, then reached out to scratch his hair, brushing off the dust clinging to his head and face. He gathered his composure and looked at Tiao Tiao, whose scales had shattered and blood was oozing from the wounds. He sighed softly, hugged its winged claws, and grabbed a handful of life dust from his item bag, sprinkling it at Tiao Tiao. Thank you for your hard work. Lin Lin had just been knocked unconscious by a slap, but thankfully Tiao Tiao was there. It took him a while to recover. He looked around. The ground was full of potholes, clearly the marks left by Tiao Tiao's battle with the Golden Lion. There was no sign of the Golden Lion. It seemed Tiao Tiao had repelled it. Fortunately, he had made it this time. Lin Lin breathed a sigh of relief, rubbing his stuffy chest. Luckily, he finally used his shield to protect himself, dispersing some of the force. Otherwise, a few broken bones would have been the least of his worries. As expected of a Golden Lion, right? With that kind of power, even a casual slap nearly knocked his defenseless head off. My helmet's been pulled off. I wonder where it's buried under the rubble. I have to look for it. It shouldn't be too far away. After a while of struggling, Lin Lin put his helmet back on, took out some potions, and carefully treated both himself and Tiao Tiao's injuries. The fierce battle with the Golden Lion had been far more intense than anything like a ghost frog, shadow spider, and almost rivaled that of a max force 1000 blade dragon. Tiao Tiao was exhausted, but luckily, There was a recently eaten carcass of a dewlap dragon nearby, which he could feast on to replenish his energy. How's it going? After this fight, do you feel any changes? Lin Lin peeled off every last piece of the red-armored beast's carapace, dragging a large bag over to Tiao Tiao's side. Roar. What changes? Pain, hunger, and fatigue, nothing else. Is that so? Lin Lin pondered for a moment. Alright, we've got the stuff anyway. After we've eaten, we return to the village and get some rest. Of course, before returning to the village, Lin Lin specifically flew back to the hot air balloon and asked the two scholars from the Ancient Dragon Observatory for information on the Golden Lion. However, to his surprise, the two scholars carefully reviewed the recent observation records and found no mention of the Golden Lion. That's not surprising. The Golden Lion itself is an ecological mystery, making it difficult to observe. We still know nothing about its reproduction, growth, and habits. Perhaps this Golden Lion has been hiding itself well, but considering its aggressive nature, it could also be that it's just arrived at the volcano. That's what the old dragon said. Lin Lin was a little worried. Tiao Tiao had been forced to fight with all his might to protect himself, leading to the Golden Lion being infected with dragon madness. Its aggression would inevitably increase. Would this impact the volcanic ecosystem? After learning of Lin Lin's concerns, the old dragon said they would closely monitor the Golden Lion's condition and, if necessary, issue a subjugation commission. He rested his mind. After concluding this brief red-armored beast hunting trip, Lin Lin returned to Naguli village with a large bag of materials, which he handed over to the blacksmith. Well, ever since he and Yi Zi joined the brigade, the blacksmith's workload has been completely maxed out. He's been working non-stop every day. He just finished forging the 1000-blade dragon shield axe and armor, and now he's onto a shadow spider bug staff, then a set of armor dragon armor, and now he's got to forge another batch of fungus beads. On top of that, he has to monitor the progress of the airship construction to ensure he has a good understanding of it, so he can better maintain it later. The daughter of the village chief, Oxhorn Beard, has also been pestering him, wanting to learn forging techniques from him. Busy, really too busy. All Lin Lin could do was try not to interrupt them. Lin Lin, tell me, what kind of monster is the Golden Lion? That day, Sophia came to Lin Lin again, holding the notebook, excitedly questioning him. I've already told you it's a very dangerous creature, no less dangerous than an ancient dragon. It's incredibly powerful, yet small and agile, making it very difficult to deal with. It's all in the books. Can you tell me something we don't know? Lin Lin rested his head on Tiao Tiao's arm, speechless. What do you mean we all do? Aren't you the only one here who's curious? I'm curious too. Nia Lu, who had curiously followed along, interjected. Even if you can't imitate it, could you at least describe its moves? Well, there's nothing much to say. Turtle punch, instant turtle punch followed by turtle punch followed by turtle punch, back jump followed by turtle punch, spin dash followed by turtle punch. Nia Lu listened, feeling as if she reached a saturation point. She no longer understood what the 3 words turtle punch meant. Sophia was also a little dissatisfied. But something doesn't feel right to me. Is the Golden Lion only capable of swinging its fists? I remember reading about it spitting lasers. Can you describe what its lasers actually look like? Lin Lin closed his eyes and replayed his previous encounter with the Golden Lion. Although he couldn't clearly recall the latter part of the fight because he had been knocked away, Tiao Tiao's explanations allowed him to reconstruct the scene in his mind. Lasers. It didn't fire. Sophia, huh? It's strange. I didn't see the Scion monkey transform during that battle. No lasers, no Dochi hardened red hands. Could it be that? Sophia, huh? What's a Scion monkey? And what do red hands mean? Lin Lin shook his head. I'm actually a little lucky. That Golden Lion wasn't in its full form. Otherwise, Tiao Tiao and I would be in real danger. Nia tilted her head. Not in its full form. What do you mean, Meow? It means that it probably hasn't completed its coming-of-age ceremony yet. It can't enter its Dochi hardened state and unleash its full power. Coming-of-age ceremony? Hearing something new and unfamiliar, Sophia's eyes sparkled, and she looked ready to get to the bottom of it. This is a long story. Lin Lin scratched his head, wondering where to begin and how to make his revelations less abrupt, when a powerful voice suddenly interrupted the tea party. Brother Lin Lin. Master wants you over. Oh! It's Gemma? Lin Lin peeked in and nodded. I'd be there right away. Sophia, What the hell? You're cutting things off here. How abhorrent. Brother Blacksmith, Are the fungus beads ready? The blacksmith smiled a slightly relieved smile. They're done. Once you attach them to the armor, they be effective. You can test the results later. They should be able to effectively suppress the activation of the explosive slime mold. Thank you, brother. You're welcome. Which set of equipment do you want them attached to? The newly crafted armored dragon armor, or this transformed ice shark suit? How long will the armored dragon suit take? Well, it'd take about half a month, maybe 10 days. Lin fell into deep thought. The airship should be ready in the next few days, right? Gemma, unsure of what they were talking about, simply nodded. Of course. With all of us in Naguli village working together, building an airship shouldn't be a piece of cake. It should be finished by the day after tomorrow at the latest. Lin nodded. Once the airship is finished, we be leaving, right? Then there's no need to hesitate. Put on this transforming ice shark suit. Before I leave, I want to do a little more for the villagers. Curious, Gemma inquired further, only to learn that a shattered dragon was lingering in the underground volcano, and Lin wanted to eliminate the threat to the village before leaving. This deeply touched her, and she kept pulling Lin to thank him. Don't be polite. We're just helping each other. Without the support of everyone in the village, we wouldn't be able to reach our destination, right? Since Lin had brought back a sufficient number of red armored beast shells, and the blacksmith had crafted a considerable number of mycology beads, after Lin had donned his own, Yeezy also finished inlaying his 1,000-blade dragon armor. Then, it was time to set off. Lin, Yeezy, Yizeo, Nia Lu, Two Cats, and Tiao all fully equipped at the village entrance. After a hearty meal of the cat chef's lovingly prepared fried rice, they were ready to set out hunting. Wait, take one with me. Sophia came running, waving as she ran. Yeezy frowned slightly. The shattering dragon is tough to deal with. We really can't take care of your safety this time. I understand. Sophia nodded vigorously. I just stay hidden and observe the situation through binoculars. I won't disturb you. I think you said the same thing last time. Lin muttered silently. But after a moment's thought, he finally nodded. All right. Since Sophia had already changed the subjugation to a capture, there was no need to disappoint her. Just take her along. It's not like I've never taken her along before, right? Great. Let's go! Jump, let's go! And just like that, accompanied by a few excited shouts, the pitch-black dragon spread its wings and soared into the sky. Chapter 432. A dragon, carrying 3 people, 2 cats, and a host of gear specially prepared for its capture, couldn't even fit on a cart. But for Taio, it was no problem at all. He soared effortlessly into the sky, heading in the direction of his last encounter with the broken dragon. A blazing breath assaulted him, but after being blocked by the heat-resistant stone, only the pungent smell of sulfur remained. Calmly surging magma formed a lake ahead, and golden red bubbles rose and burst, splashing like rain of fire onto the rock wall, quickly solidifying into charred crystals. Wow, so spectacular! Sophia couldn't help but exclaim. It's completely different from when the lava was blocked before. Is this what a volcano really looks like? Yezi tilted his head, glancing at Sophia behind him, and reminded her, remember to have another cold drink before you go down. It's much hotter here than in the village. Yeah. I know. Sophia nodded repeatedly. The scenery inside this volcano is spectacular, but it's also incredibly hot. I wonder how those who live here survive without cold drinks. Yezi was a little puzzled. Perhaps we just haven't adapted to the environment here, so we need cold drinks. Look, the earth dragons have lived here for so many years, don't they basically need them? That's because they're earth dragons. Their body structure is different from ours, and they're naturally more heat resistant. I wasn't talking about them. Sophia corrected him. Not them? So there are other human meows living in the volcanic area? Nialu swayed, trying to shake off the volcanic ash that had rubbed against her. Hearing this, she couldn't help but ask curiously. Yes, there's more than just Naguri village in the volcanic zone. There's a human kingdom further south, in the southern Elder region. If I remember correctly, it's called the Fire Nation. P.S. This is a personal post. Capcom never revealed the exact location of the Fire Nation, so we can only speculate. Fire Nation? Lin had been concentrating on checking the directions, acting as navigator for Taio, when he heard Sophia's words, and was slightly taken aback. He seemed to have some recollection of the name. Where had he heard it? Oh right, he remembered a joke he heard before. Lanlong could destroy a nation, and so could Yangalong. So Yangalong and Lanlong were equally powerful. The country Lanlong destroyed was Ai Chow's former home, the Moon People's capital, and the country threatened by Yangalong was, I think, the Fire Nation. Of course, this nation ultimately averted destruction. After most of its defenses were destroyed, the desperate Fire Nation princess issued a commission to the Hunters Guild, and the invincible King Nibwa intervened to avert the Fire Nation's crisis. I can't quite remember which game this quest was from, but it must have been King Nibwa who did it. I don't know if there's a Konoha village in that Fire Nation, but I imagine there probably isn't, otherwise the protagonist wouldn't have needed to intervene. I read about it in a book too. It seems to be a small nation, nothing compared to larger kingdoms like the Western Shredder Kingdom and the Eastern Shredder Republic. Sophia paused, noticing everyone's apparent interest in the Fire Nation. Then she continued, sharing all the relevant information she knew. Lin, do you remember the red armored beast we hunted? Lin nodded. I heard from the blacksmith before that the armor of the Crimson Beast was designed by craftsmen from the Fire Nation. I heard that they use it as a formal attire for coming-of-age ceremonies there. I see. It sounds like this is a very interesting place. Yezi's eyes sparkled. It was a good thing she had chosen to travel with brother Lin. Otherwise, she wouldn't have learned such anecdotes if she had stayed in the village. Oh, we're here. This is where the Shattered Dragon and the Explosive Hammer Dragon fought over their territory last time. With Tayo as their guide, they sped along at a rapid pace, and in the midst of a brief conversation, they had already reached their destination. After a quick look around, finding no sign of the Shattered Dragon, Lin waved his hand, and Tayo slowly descended, landing smoothly. Is that the remains of the Explosive Hammer Dragon? Sophia's first attention was a small mine not far ahead, about 20 meters long and 6 or 7 meters high. Lin glanced at it. Yes, indeed. Over the past few days, it's pretty much returned to dust. The original Explosive Hammer Dragon had a massive body over 20 meters long, the entire dragon practically as thick as a heavy tank, head and tail thick. But after its demise in the battle with the Shattering Dragon, seeking to replenish its energy, blasted its remaining defenses with a series of explosions, ripping through the flesh within. After the Shattering Dragon's departure, small predators roaming the surrounding area descended upon it, followed by scavenging creatures, who stripped the carcass of its flesh, leaving only the inedible or shells piled on the ground. Slowly melting under the volcanic heat, they might later form new or mining sites, or perhaps be devoured by mineral-eating monsters like the Armored Dragon. It was a bit of a shame. The materials from the Blast Hammer Dragon should be enough to make armor just as good as the Armored Dragon. He remembered that both sets of equipment had defensive and offensive enhancements. Shaking his head, Lin stopped paying attention to the ores and focused on searching for traces. I shot a dive ball at it, but it's been so many days, it's probably lost its effect. Let's all look for it, and see if we can find any trace of it. Leave it to me. I do my best. The most active in searching for traces weren't the hunters, but Nialu and Sophia. Nialu knew she had the sharpest senses, and was the best at finding traces in the team, so she naturally wanted to perform well and prove herself worthy of being a hunter cat. As for Sophia, well, you get it. Soon, they made a discovery. Here, meow. There's an unexploded piece of slime mold on the rock face. Niala's face lit up with excitement, pointing to a patch of gravel in a corner that glowed a brilliant green. The traces look fresh, meow. It must have passed by here in the last 2 days. Sophia, undeterred by being beaten to the punch, came over with her notebook, intent on carefully documenting the shape of the slime mold. Sure enough, it's still nearby. Lin walked over and, under Sophia's horrified gaze, scraped off a small piece of slime mold, examining it closely. Hey! Be careful. It could explode. Yezi reached out and placed a hand on Sophia's shoulder, shaking his head at her. He then scraped off a small piece of slime mold as well. Nialu? ? I want to try it too, meow. What are you trying? Be careful you get bald spots, meow. Yezao grabbed Nialu and pinned her down in an instant. He explained to the confused man and cat, the boss and the other's armor is inlaid with mycological beads that can suppress the activity of explosive slime mold. We're testing its effectiveness, meow. So how's the effect, meow? Yezao was speechless. Can't you see for yourself, meow? Lin twirled the slime mold in his hand, and found that no matter how he stimulated it, it didn't turn the critical yellow-orange color. He nodded in satisfaction. But that wasn't the end of it. He tested the slime mold on his torso, legs, and helmet. The results were stable, and there were no problems. Then he threw it to the ground. After landing, the slime mold, having been subjected to so much stimulation, quickly turned from green to yellow, and then exploded with a loud bang. However, due to the small amount, the explosion was very faint. Fortunately, the effect was indeed quite good, making the price of Taio's disdain worthwhile. The blacksmith had previously mentioned that the mycology beads had side effects, but the exact mechanism wasn't clear. When Lin Lin, donning the transformed ice shark suit inlaid with the beads, swung around in front of Taio, he understood. Taio shrugged, then buried his head in his arms, growling muffledly, indicating that the leader smelled terrible, just like that stinky red bowling ball. The mycology beads worked by extracting a special bacteria from the red armored beast. This bacteria could inhibit the activity of slime mold, but in return, its metabolites emitted an indescribable odor. It was barely noticeable to humans, but to monsters with a keen sense of smell, it was as conspicuous as a septic tank suddenly appearing in a park filled with birdsong and flowers. Suddenly, a muffled sound of collapsing rock echoed in the distance. From beneath their feet to overhead, the entire space seemed to tremble. Crushed rocks tumbled into the lava, instantly dissolving into smoke. That's... Yi turned and met Lin Lin's gaze. Yes, that sound is the explosion caused by the broken dragon. Let's go! In a cave not far from Lin Lin and the others, the broken dragon they were searching for, clutching a lifeless lava beast in its mouth, slowly entered a crudely constructed dragon's nest. In the nest, 3 dragon eggs of varying sizes lay quietly together. Upon closer inspection, one was shaking constantly, the new life within struggling to break free from its shell and emerge into this new world. Of the other 2 eggs, one had its shell shattered, its young already emerging. This other was nearly half the size of the others, an unfertilized egg destined to hatch nothing. The broken dragon glanced at the dangling dragon egg for a moment, then turned around, looking around before slowly landing on the ground not far away. There, a small, charred corpse lay motionless. That was the first broken dragon to emerge from its shell, but now, it was a corpse. Clearly, it couldn't withstand the slime mold carried by its mother, and was killed by the explosion. The broken dragon stared at the charred corpse for a long time, motionless. After a long moment, the dangling dragon egg made a slight crack, and cracks appeared on the shell. However, this seemed to have drained the life within. After creating a crack, the dragon egg fell silent, as if realizing its current strength was insufficient, and needing to regroup and adjust its form before continuing its breakthrough. The broken dragon released the lava beast's corpse from its mouth, and looked down at the motionless dragon egg. After a moment's thought, it gently nudged it with its mouth. It hadn't noticed, however, that from holding the lava beast, a few strands of saliva had fallen from the corners of its mouth. As it moved, they landed on the eggshell, adding a faint hue of green. This hue then seeped slowly through the cracks in the shell, and into the dragon egg's interior. Roar! A furious roar suddenly echoed from nearby, causing the broken dragon to look up. It recognized that roar. It had recently been hunting these small lava beasts frequently, but one of their leaders, over 25 meters long, always tried to attack it whenever it spotted it hunting. However, Shatter Dragon, always focused on returning to its lair to feed its young, avoided engaging it excessively and returned to its lair after the hunt. It hadn't expected the creature to be so persistent, this time even following it right up to its lair. It glanced again at the charred corpse. Since the one it needed to bring food to was already dead, it felt no need to suppress its temper and roared in response. It was livid right now, and this pointed creature, offering itself as a punching bag, was a perfect place for it to vent its anger. The leader of the lava beasts was, of course, the flame dragon. This sea dragon monster inhabits volcanic regions. Its powerful beak allows it to burrow into the Earth's crust, allowing it to swim freely through magma. It can also collect magma within its body, and eject it in a form similar to the armor dragon's high heat ray. It's considered a top predator in volcanic regions. The Fire Nation, mentioned by Lin Lin and others earlier, was nearly destroyed by this creature. As a juvenile of the flame dragon, although the lava beast's combat effectiveness is quite low, it's only a small predator comparable to the likes of the dog dragon. However, its presence has caused considerable trouble for many hunters mining for volcanic minerals and protective stones. More importantly, it has a strong sense of territory, yet it is extremely united with its own kind. After the lava beast was repeatedly preyed upon by the Shatter Dragon, the flame dragon finally lost its patience and attacked. Both sides roared, and following the sound, the two dragons soon collided. Upon meeting, without a defiant roar, the beast dragon and the sea dragon charged directly at each other. Without a word, the two monsters, a long-standing feud, engaged in a brawl. The flame dragon, relying on its ability to swim freely in the underground magma, leaped into the air, dodging Shattered Dragon's powerful punch and burrowing into the ground. Feeling a slight tremor beneath its feet, Shattered Dragon glanced around warily, wondering where the other dragon would emerge. Bang! The next moment, swathed in scorching magma, the flame dragon attacked from behind. Its slender body, like a python, wrapped around Shattered Dragon, intent on strangling it to death. Chapter 433. As a sea dragon, the flame dragon possessed a slender build. Judging by its stats, it was nearly half the size of the broken dragon. Its body wrapped around the broken dragon, tightly constricting it. If it hadn't held its front paws out in front of it, trying to resist and leave room for its throat, it would have been quickly strangled. The situation remained stagnant for a moment, and the flame dragon was clearly dissatisfied. It coiled around the broken dragon, twisting its body and aiming its head at the broken dragon's throat, suddenly opening its mouth to bite. However, the broken dragon was clearly a monster with considerable combat experience, constantly protecting its vitals. The moment the flame dragon opened its mouth, it thrust out a front paw and pressed against the flame dragon's neck, preventing it from advancing. The flame dragon opened and closed its mouth, only to gnaw at air. Its futile attempts only weakened the body wrapped around Shattered Dragon. Sensing this, Shattered Dragon seized the opportunity. Its front paw pressed against the flame dragon's neck, suddenly exerting force and pinning it to the ground. Without hesitation, Shattered Dragon, like a seasoned boxer, delivered a steady, accurate, and powerful punch with its free left paw, striking the flame dragon's forehead, sending sparks swirling in its eyes. That wasn't the end of it. While the flame dragon was still recovering, Shattered Dragon thrust its head back and delivered a powerful headbutt. Ouch! Shattered Dragon's punches were powerful, and the headbutt, enhanced by its airplane head skull, was equally potent. The flame dragon roared in pain, realizing it had no advantage in close combat. It quickly shifted its tactics, swinging its body and swiftly creating distance between itself and Shattered Dragon. If melee isn't working, then let's go for ranged combat. The flame dragon took a deep breath, about to mobilize the magma stored within its body, transforming it into breath to attack its opponent. However, it didn't notice that as it inhaled, the slime mold it had recently infested during the battle transformed from a luminous green to a dangerous orange red. Swish. Boom. 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 Almost as the magma breath left its mouth, 3 violent explosions erupted from its body. The powerful impact of the blast directly blew its body sideways. Unable to withstand the recoil of the magma breath, the crimson beams scattered everywhere, striking the dangling rock pillars overhead and plowing across the ground in front of the broken dragon, but failing to hit the braced broken dragon as it had hoped. Bang! The flame dragon's body staggered, its eyes and mouth twisted by the explosion. Its cooled magma armor, which had been strong enough to withstand most attacks, failed to protect it from the violent explosions, leaving it with extensive wounds. However, this was, after all, a massive monster, over 25 meters long, with considerable vitality. Although the explosion had given it considerable pain, it eventually shook its head and recovered. To save the flame dragon's reputation, it said that the flame dragon that was shattered in the Dragon Smash CG wasn't fully grown. Furthermore, for a creature capable of burrowing through lava to be shattered by 2 explosions is still somewhat absurd. The Dragon Smash attempted to pursue, but the flame dragon's gaze was filled with fear. Knowing this creature wasn't to be trifled with, it suddenly leaped up, dodging the Dragon Smash's fist and, with that leap, burrowing smoothly into the ground. Seeing its opponent repeat its old trick, Shattered Dragon paused, cautiously glancing around to avoid further entanglement. After a moment's quiet waiting, the tremors in the ground rapidly subsided, and no movement could be detected. Shattered Dragon finally realized that its opponent, sensing the situation was dire, had simply fled. This infuriated it. It had intended to punch a punching bag, but the dragon had fled after only 2 punches, leaving it no time to vent its anger. Looking around to confirm that the flame dragon wouldn't return, Shattered Dragon could only vent its rage on several nearby massive rocks. With a continuous barrage of powerful punches, it shattered each one into a heap of rubble. Then, with a long roar, it declared its victory. Paw! A strange sensation suddenly struck him, as if something had struck him. The broken dragon's roar paused slightly, and he turned his head to look at the base of his tail, where the sensation had come from. A pool of pink liquid with a pungent smell came into view, a familiar smell. After a moment's pause, the broken dragon suddenly looked up, and sure enough, he saw the large black bat flying overhead again. The broken dragon roared furiously, the rage he had just finally vented surging back. After all, if the bat didn't land, he simply couldn't do anything about it in midair. You cowardly bastard shitting in the sky. Get down here and die. However, to his surprise, the creature that had previously retreated to the sky actually swooped down and charged towards him. This delighted the broken dragon, and instead of being startled, he roared with excitement, leaped up, and charged forward with his fist raised. Isn't it just a black eclipse dragon? Look, I push it back with my fist, but this time, it miscalculated. Tayo wasn't one of those monsters it had encountered before, the kind that would simply charge forward and be knocked unconscious by its explosive fists. Having learned about the broken dragon from Lin Lin long ago, it had long been prepared for its fists. Just as it was about to collide with the broken dragon, Tayo suddenly flapped its wings, halting its dive. Lin Lin, perched on its back, watched helplessly as the broken dragon, fist raised, passed beneath him. His eyes shifted from excitement to bewilderment, and then, upon landing, to surging rage. The broken dragon had never imagined it would be toyed with by the same dragon twice in a row. Wingless, it spun in a parabola, plummeting heavily to the ground. Tayo, flapping its wings, hovered in midair, just within reach of the broken dragon's leap. Since its last fierce battle with the golden lion, Tayo's size hasn't changed significantly, as it did with the armored dragon, but after less rigorous testing, its strength and reaction speed seemed to have increased somewhat. Sophia speculated that Tayo's molting was likely a process of quantitative change accumulating into qualitative change. This was the case with its previous battles, with the Black Erosion Dragon, and the Ultimate Thousand Blades Dragon. No noticeable changes were seen at the time, but after replenishing its energy and undergoing several more battles, it finally underwent its first transformation. To continue its transformation, it still requires more battle experience. This time, the dragon-shattering operation offered a rare opportunity to engage in combat with a powerful opponent. Thus, upon noticing the explosion caused by the dragon shattering, Lin Lin and Tayo rushed ahead, quickly engaging the dragon shattering, depleting its energy as much as possible while ensuring their own safety. Yezi and the two cats followed Sophia on foot to officially begin the capture operation. Chapter 434. Roar! After landing, the broken dragon stared at Tiao in midair. Apparently aware it couldn't reach it, it didn't attempt to leap up and attack again, only roaring provocatively. Lin Lin stared at the broken dragon, and had Tiao perform a few more feints of descent. But aside from the first one, which successfully tricked it into leaping up and striking the dragon, the subsequent attempts simply stared fixedly at Tiao in midair, its body remaining firmly planted on the ground, motionless as a mountain. You've learned your lesson. Seeing the broken dragon had learned its lesson, its unwavering determination to seize the opportunity, Lin Lin knew they had to confront it head-on. The broken dragon was resting on the ground, waiting for the opportunity, while Tiao was expending energy flying in midair. If they continued this confrontation, they would be the ones to suffer. Let's get down. Lin Lin gently patted Tiao's scales, and Tiao understood, slowing down its wing beats and landing on the ground under the broken dragon's gaze. Roar! The broken dragon roared excitedly, strode towards Tiao, and swung a punch. Following Lin Lin's instructions, Tiao knew not to get tainted by the opponent's slime mold. He kept a close eye on the opponent's punches. He used all four limbs to evade the blow with a sideways leap, allowing the broken dragon's fist to strike the ground. Tiao took advantage of the opponent's turn and lashed out with his tail to the side of the thigh. Although the damage was minor, the pain was palpable. Unexpectedly, he would suffer a minor loss in the exchange. The broken dragon roared, staggered a step, and steadied himself before swinging another swift punch sideways, not seeking to deliver much force, but simply to land. As long as it could. If it could hit any part of it, the powerful slime mold would teach it how to be a dragon. Alas, broken dragon's furious fist ultimately missed. Tayo leaped up, and with a powerful flap of his wings, broken dragon's punch could only glide past Tayo's body, briefly knocking the dragon off balance. Tayo naturally wouldn't miss this golden opportunity. After a brief moment of airborne suspension, he launched his massive body directly at broken dragon below, crushing it with a crushing blow. The crushing blow completely broke broken dragon's barely maintained balance, sending it plummeting to the ground. Perfect opportunity. Knock it down. This was the perfect moment to strike down the fallen dragon. Without Lin Lin's orders, Tayo charged forward, one wing claw raining down a series of blows on its thighs, while the other claw pressed down on shattering dragon's shoulder from its back, pinning it down and preventing it from rising. This tricky angle also prevented shattering dragon's fist from reaching it, preventing it from getting stained by slime and exploding. Tayo's wing claws were as powerful as shattering dragon's punches, and the wing claws on its shoulder temporarily prevented it from rising. A flurry of punches followed, and even Shattering Dragon's explosion-tested obsidian carapace couldn't withstand the continuous blows. It began to crack under the continuous blows, and then a large area of it shattered. Having pre-read the opponent's attack capabilities, Tayo successfully suppressed Shattering Dragon in a one-on-one situation, even without initiating Mad Dragon transformation. At this point, the situation was extremely favorable. It was safe to say that, barring any unexpected events, Tayo could suppress Shattering Dragon to death. Tayo's strength is improving so rapidly. Lin sighed inwardly. The little yellow speed dragon that once was cornered by the sand dragon has now become a formidable force capable of easily suppressing the powerful Map King. However, this time he was dealing with the broken dragon, and out of consideration for Sophia's feelings, he deliberately chose to capture it. If he severely injured and crippled it here, even if he later released it into the wild far from the village, it would likely be eliminated by the harsh forces of nature. So, after seeing the broken dragon's thigh carapace shattered and blood flowing, Lin signaled Tayo to stop. Alright, just keep suppressing it from now on. Then something unexpected happened. When Lin decided to capture it, Sophia had said that capturing it would be more difficult than subduing it. Reality isn't a game. In games, capturing can reduce the damage by a few dozen %, but in reality, even if you show mercy to your captured target, the monsters you attack won't appreciate it. They only know that in the brutal competition for survival, since you didn't kill me, I kill you. Tayo's continuous heavy blows had consumed a considerable amount of his energy. Now that the offensive stopped, he naturally relaxed his strength. The pinned Shattering Dragon felt the force release from his body. His brain, raging with the intense pain, instantly seized the opportunity. With a sudden force, he twisted his body to break free from Tayo's control, and then swung a backhand punch. Because both of his wing claws were used to suppress Shattering Dragon, when it broke free, the claws were inevitably pressed against the ground due to inertia. Facing Shattering Dragon's blow, there was no way to avoid it, and he could only use his wing claws to withstand it. Not good. The broken dragon's furious punch was powerful. Even the Black Erosion Dragon's tough claws couldn't withstand it. Scales shattered, blood flowed, but even more dangerous was the ring of luminous green slime that had clung to its claws. Get some distance. Lin knew that Broken Dragon's punch had instantly reversed the situation. Once the slime exploded, Broken Dragon would certainly not miss this opportunity. It was already fuming with nowhere to vent its anger. Bang! Pop! Along with the violent explosions, the sound of a flashbang went off. At this critical moment, Lin threw a flashbang, interrupting Broken Dragon's movement and briefly blinding it. Lin didn't take this opportunity to rush over and attack Broken Dragon. Instead, he grabbed a handful of life dust and sprinkled it on Tayo's injured claw. Roar! Tayo couldn't help but let out a suppressed, painful growl. The black dragon's resistance to fire was weak, and its tolerance to blasts was equally low. The slime mold explosion dealt it heavy damage, shattering and cracking large areas of scales on its wing claws. The area directly affected by the slime mold explosion had even created a massive crater, charring vast swathes of flesh and blood. Now enveloped in the life dust, Tayo's screams of pain quickly faded, and the blood in his wounds quickly congealed and began to scab over. Lin hurriedly unscrewed several bottles of healing potion and poured them onto Tayo's wounds. The healing potion quickly soothed the intense pain. Tayo breathed a sigh of relief and nuzzled Lin with his head, expressing his gratitude. I'm sorry, it's all because of my orders that you're injured. Lin sighed softly and reached out to remove the shield axe from his back. Stay away and rest your wounds. Leave the rest of the battle to me. Chapter 435. When Broken Dragon recovered from the dizziness caused by the flash and glanced around frantically, he discovered that the pitch-black dragon hadn't taken advantage of the opportunity to attack him, but had already vanished from his sight. Did it run away? It seemed the slime mold explosion had successfully injured it. This made Broken Dragon breathe a sigh of relief. Being outmatched in the direct confrontation had already put him under immense pressure, and he finally seized the opportunity to turn the tables. He hadn't expected the giant black bat to possess a hidden ability similar to the poisonous bird. Luckily, the creature retreated after being wounded by the slime mold. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had the confidence to continue the fight. Thinking this, Broken Dragon took a step back to his lair, but as soon as he took a step, pain in his thigh forced him to slow down, and his steps began to stumble. Even after he slowed down, Broken Dragon's leg injury still limited his mobility to a certain extent. Clang! The clang of metal rubbing against each other echoed. Though the sound wasn't loud, it was remarkably clear to Shattered Dragon's ears. It paused, turning its head to look in the direction of the sound. It was a shimmering golden shield, the glow of the surrounding lava reflected against it, giving it a dazzling golden red hue. Lin Lin pointed his charged sword at Shattered Dragon from a distance, the tip of his blade slightly raised. Although he remained silent, the challenge was clearly conveyed to the opposing dragon. Roar! Shattered Dragon took one look and felt a surge of inexplicable anger rising in his chest. That giant black bat might have been fine. At least its size was there, and they were on the same level. How could a tiny creature that appeared out of nowhere dare to challenge him like this? This creature, in particular, emanated a strange, foul odor, which filled it with a profound disgust, making it wish it could pulverize it with one punch. During the previous battle with Tayo Tayo, its attention had been focused on Tayo Tayo, with Lin Lin lying on its back, making him invisible. Therefore, the broken dragon had no idea the human before it was part of the same group as the black dragon. It simply assumed it was a roadside creature that had appeared from nowhere, and with a roar, it was ready to destroy it with a single punch. It was always the broken dragon who would strike down any creature it disliked. How dare you challenge me? But after a few rounds of fighting, the broken dragon's thinking subtly shifted. The vast majority of its attacks missed, and even when a punch managed to graze the opponent, it was firmly blocked by the shimmering golden shield. Even more astonishingly, the broken dragon's reaction to the opponent's slime mold infection was even more surprising. The slime mold, always invincible, exploding upon contact and leaving its opponents in a state of disarray, was now ineffective. If it weren't for the fact that the slime mold that clung to the ground after its punches still exploded normally, it would have suspected that its own slime mold had secretly died, while it wasn't paying attention. Hey! Are you doomed without the slime mold? Then why not stop calling yourself the Broken Dragon, and become the Fungus Dragon? Lin Lin struck his sword and shield together, producing a sharp sound to attract the Broken Dragon's attention. He didn't care whether the opponent could understand or not, simply provoking it. The Broken Dragon was probably indeed provoked. It stopped pondering why the slime mold had no effect on Lin Lin, and instead raised its head, and let out a deafening roar. As it roared, the slime mold on the Broken Dragon's body underwent a visible color change, from its initial ember green to a warring orange-yellow. Seeing this, Lin Lin's expression grew graver. Before the hunt began, Sophia had recounted a long list of facts about the Broken Dragon, including this one. When the Broken Dragon enters its enraged state, its saliva evaporates, and the ingredients within it that activate the slime mold spread throughout its body, causing the slime mold on its body to enter an activated state. In this state, the slime mold no longer scatters and clings to the ground upon impact, but explodes directly. The mycology beads can only prevent the slime mold on the body from activating and exploding, but they have no effect on the slime mold on the Broken Dragon. Be careful in the upcoming battle. Bang! Bang! The enraged Broken Dragon struck again, but this time with far greater force. Two booms echoed, the first as his fist struck the ground, followed by a violent explosion. Even though he had already dodged out of the range of Shattering Dragon's fist, the powerful blast from the explosion still slightly unsteadied Lin Lin's stance. Shattering Dragon seized this opportunity, head held high, ready to headbutt the reckless human. However, the human before him had too many tricks. Shattering Dragon watched helplessly, as he seemed to release something, then his body was dragged away by an invisible force. Without time to react, he slammed his head into the ground. Using the Kinsect to pull him out of Shattering Dragon's range, Lin Lin immediately engaged his sword and shield, and before Shattering Dragon could pull its head out of the crater, he delivered a powerful blow. Bang! With Lin Lin's current strength, even without the boost of the bottle explosion, this attack still packs a formidable punch, shattering its shell, and leaving a narrow scar on the Broken Dragon's head, from which blood slowly seeps. This time, the Broken Dragon didn't roar in pain. Instead, it stared at Lin Lin with its crimson eyes, filled with murderous intent, and charged again. To be honest, dealing with the Broken Dragon's relentless attacks in a rage was quite stressful. Fortunately, Tiao Tiao had previously injured its leg, making it difficult for it to move swiftly. Lin Lin wasn't stubborn enough to engage it head-on, focusing his energy on dodging its attacks. With the Kinsect's assistance, he quickly pinned the Broken Dragon to the spot. When Yi Zi arrived at the battlefield with his two cats and Sophia, Broken Dragon, having fought 3 consecutive battles with Flame Dragon, Tiao Tiao, and Lin Lin, was already struggling to sustain the intense energy consumption of his rage state. The slime mold on his body had returned from orange to a bright green. He was now panting, his movements sluggish, and his body was covered in long, narrow wounds. However, he still attacked Lin Lin with unwavering determination. Lin Lin's condition at this moment was far from perfect. While the intense fighting had helped him overcome his dragon madness, it had also inflicted significant physical strain. In a one-on-one fight, Broken Dragon wouldn't allow him to feed and replenish his energy, causing Lin Lin's reactions to slow down. Often, he was unable to dodge attacks, and could only hold up his shield to withstand them. After repeated attacks, he eventually suffered severe concussions. Brother Lin Lin, are you okay? Yeezy waved his hand, releasing the small armor to temporarily distract Shattered Dragon. He then quickly reached Lin Lin's side, offering a hand to steady his slightly swaying form. Huh? I'm okay, just a little tired. Lin Lin finally found a moment to catch his breath. He peeled off a piece of food he had brought with him, and quickly swallowed it with his big green tea. Feeling the warmth spreading through his stomach, he finally felt better, and regained some of his energy. This guy's condition is already very poor. Let's push harder. Roar! Exhausted from the continuous battle, Shattered Dragon's attention was briefly distracted by a bright red rhinoceros beetle. Upon regaining consciousness, he noticed that the enemy he had been battling for so long had visibly recovered significantly, and now had a companion by his side. He roared furiously. Though his roar now sounded weak, the pent-up anger within it was unmistakable. You jerk, you're plotting against me. If it had been a one-on-one fight like just now, Broken Dragon wouldn't have given his opponent any hope of victory. But now, he was the one being beaten, and he couldn't recover like his opponent. This fight couldn't continue. Boss, it's escaping, meow. Don't rush after it. I lost the color ball. It should be almost ready to catch it. Broken Dragon had originally intended to hunt for prey and replenish its energy through food, but when it reached the lava lake where it usually hunted lava beasts, it found the little creatures had vanished. The leader of the lava beasts went to Broken Dragon to demand an explanation, but even he was beaten. Unable to defeat them, and unwilling to be eaten, he had no choice but to flee. The lava beasts had relocated, thinking they could avoid them if they couldn't, but they had no idea how upset Broken Dragon was, having made such a wasted trip. The long battle had drained its energy. Its wounds needed energy to heal, but it lacked food to replenish them. The Broken Dragon looked around, finding no sign of life. Suppressing its hunger, it limped back to its lair, hoping to sleep, to recover and alleviate its hunger. With heavy steps, the Broken Dragon followed the familiar path through the complex underground caverns, returning to its lair. It first glanced at the charred corpse nearby, then at the cracked dragon egg. Noticing the hatchling inside hadn't yet hatched, it paid no more attention, curling up, closing its eyes, and falling into a deep sleep. Soon, a glistening bubble of snot bulged from its nostril. 5 minutes later, a furry little head poked out of the cave entrance, surveyed its surroundings for a moment, then retreated silently. How's it going? Yezi looked at Nialu. That's the guy's lair inside, meow. Looks like he's exhausted from the previous battle, sleeping soundly. Yeezy couldn't help but glance back at the tired-looking Lin Lin, his lips pursed. I'm sorry, Brother Lin, I should have come with you. We both took the mission together, but I left you fighting alone for so long. Hey, what's there to apologize for? It was probably because I was a little hasty in my decision to give Tao Tao a fighting chance. No, I should be the one to apologize. If I hadn't come with you, you wouldn't have had to split up your forces just to take care of my safety. Sophia looked a little guilty. Although she deeply loved the Shattered Dragon, she wasn't so selfish as to ignore the dangers and hardships her friend had endured for her own devotion. Lin Lin rolled his eyes. Don't be ridiculous. Whether it's capturing the Broken Dragon or facing it alone, it's my decision. What are you apologizing for? Alright, stop talking nonsense. Let's hurry up and capture it while it's still recovering. Lin Lin didn't dwell on the topic any further. He glanced at Coconut Date, who weighed the large package on his back, and nodded at Lin Lin. The trap is ready, meow. Coconut Date produced a disc-shaped paralysis trap, and tiptoed into the lair. Carefully avoiding the Broken Dragon's slime-covered paws and head, he circled around to its ground-contacting legs. He pressed the trap into the ground, twisted it, and activated it. Instantly, a pulsating golden electric current emanated from the small disc. The instant it came into contact with the current, an intense paralysis spread through every muscle in the Broken Dragon's body. It awoke from its sleep, but even the slightest movement was extremely difficult. Get down, meow. Niala clutched a crimson ball in one hand, and flung it at Broken Dragon's head. As the two made contact, a plume of pink mist emanated from the ball. This was a potent anesthetic, a mixture of paralysis mushroom and sleepweed extracts. The mist was inhaled by the monster, rapidly rendering it incapable of resistance. As if fearing that 1 or 2 anesthetics weren't enough, Nyala pulled out 4 more capture anesthetic jades and flung them at Broken Dragon's face. The pink mist suddenly thickened. Broken Dragon, caught in the center of the hypnotic mist, trembled twice before collapsing headfirst to the ground. If it weren't for the faint rhythm of his breathing, he would have looked practically dead. Yawn. Nia Lu, you've lost too many, meow. Yawning, Coconut Date emerged from the thick fog, resisting a drowsy urge. This thing was specifically designed to capture giant monsters, so its hypnotic effect was naturally quite strong. If it weren't for Coconut Date's relatively high stamina, it felt like it would have fallen asleep along with the Broken Dragon. Okay, we're finally done. Sophia, why don't you check on your darling? We need to get it away from the village while the hypnotic effect is still there. Lin Lin's words were merely teasing, but Sophia, genuinely interested in observing and cherishing it, approached, carefully examining the Broken Dragon from head to toe. How's it going? Did you see anything? Yi Zi was a little curious. Unexpectedly, Sophia leaned over to the base of the Broken Dragon's tail, examined it closely for a moment, and nodded seriously. Darling is a female. Yezi's nerves faltered. Sister, do you really have to look so closely? You're so perverted. Chapter 436. Lin Lin was a bit dismayed by Sophia's behavior. He shifted his gaze from Broken Dragon and surveyed its lair. It was a semi-enclosed underground cavern, with only one entrance and exit, the front passage. It was highly concealed and secure. If they hadn't relied on the markings on the colored balls, it would have taken quite a while for them to find it. This was quite unexpected for Lin Lin. In his opinion, Broken Dragon, a fearless street thug who could kill anyone he saw, not only had he made the world his home, his blanket his bed, and his sleeping place his lair, he should have been imposing, with a broad vision and a somewhat unruly aura. He hadn't expected the lair's location to be surprisingly conservative. Huh? What is this? As his gaze fell on the lair surrounded by rubble, a glimmer of crystal white caught his attention. Dragon eggs? 2? And this one? Looks like it's about to hatch? After all, he had single-handedly raised Dakong from a dragon egg, so Lin Lin only had to take a glance and quickly made his judgment. Sophia? Lin Lin squatted before the dragon egg, looking a little worried. He turned and called out, waving at Sophia. What's wrong? Sophia reluctantly stroked the Broken Dragon's shell a couple more times before walking over to Lin Lin. Lin Lin pointed at the egg. Something went wrong. This Broken Dragon has already laid eggs. If we take it away, will it try and find a way back here? Why not send the dragon egg with it, when we send the Broken Dragon away? Sophia stared at the dragon egg in ecstasy. Lin Lin repeated his words, and only then did she come to her senses and retract her eager hand. Don't worry about that. While shadow dragons have some maternal love, it's not much, only slightly better than the lightning dragons, who give birth and then forget about their children. I remember a researcher's note mentioning that the mortality rate of shattered dragon pups is very high, and the leading cause of death is being killed by the slime mold on their parents. Sophia's words made Lin Lin think carefully, and realized he had some recollection of this. He seemed to have mentioned this point when he had watched the video introducing shattered dragon ecology. Shattered dragons don't carry their slime mold at birth, but inherit it from their parents. This inheritance process is extremely brutal. The slime mold from their parents will constantly explode, destroying the young's delicate carapace. Only by persevering through this constant destruction and rebirth, growing an indestructible obsidian armor, can they truly achieve symbiosis with the slime mold. So, is this piece of charcoal here actually the Broken Dragon's cub? Yi Zi had previously noticed something odd about the shape of a piece of charcoal not far from the nest, and had even reached out to examine it. Upon hearing Sophia's words, his brow furrowed. Although he long known not to impose human values on monsters, this Broken Dragon was a bit too cruel, as if the child wasn't his own. If that's the case, I don't agree with sending the dragon egg away with it. Yi Zi also walked over to the dragon egg, examined it for 2 seconds, and then said slowly, anyway, with this monster's weak maternal instincts, it's not certain if it will even remember it as cubs if we send it away. Instead of sending the dragon egg over, I think it's better to leave it here to fend for itself. Perhaps its chances of survival will be higher. That's true. Lin Lin nodded and was about to stand up to call Tiao Tiao, who was waiting outside the cave, to transport the Broken Dragon away. Wait a minute. Sophia suddenly called out to Lin Lin. Lin Lin, do you still remember Dakong? Lin Lin smiled. That's my cub. How could I not remember him? If he hadn't been worried about contracting dragon madness, he would have brought Dakong to his family long ago. Huh? No, why was Sophia mentioning Dakong at this moment? Could it be? Without its mother's care, it would be difficult for it to survive in this harsh nature. Sophia cradled the dragon egg in her arms, her fingers gently stroking the tiny crack on it. With its mother's care, it seems even more difficult for it to survive. Yeezy grumbled softly. No, I want to take it away. Let me be its mother. Huh? Yeezy was stunned by Sophia's words, while Lin Lin's lips twitched. As expected, this girl, inspired by him, also thought of taking the egg home to incubate it. Watching Sophia cradling the dragon egg, Lin Lin couldn't help but imagine a scene. Broken dragon. Sophia is the woman who can be my mother. So outrageous, yet unexpectedly reasonable. Hey! Is that okay? Is that okay? Feeling Sophia's expectant expression, Lin Lin felt a little helpless. If you think it's okay, I have no objection. After all, he had done it himself. Speaking of which, if Sophia really did raise Broken Dragon, given her feelings for him, the bond between them might be no less than that between him and Dakong. With some luck, she might even create a bond stone. Great. Sophia's face was filled with joy. Niala turned her head, watching the three adults exchange, a look of confusion on her face. She didn't understand and was deeply shocked. So you can take a monster egg and hatch it yourself. Seeing the three of them agree in a few words and about to begin moving the dragon shatter, she quickly caught up with them, tugged at Yeezy's shin, and whispered, "Aren't there 2 dragon eggs there, meow? Why did Sophia only take the big one, meow?" Well? Yeezy glanced back, the same question forming in her mind. Lin Lin replied, "Because the other one is dead, it won't hatch a dragon. Otherwise, Sophia would have had to carry both eggs back." The transport after capture went smoothly. Under the effects of the anesthetic jade used to capture it, the broken dragon fell into a deep sleep, practically like a dead pig. Tayo carried it for a long time, finally landing on a volcanic peak 50 kilometers from Nagili village. The broken dragon's snoring finally subsided after Tayo set it down. "Alright, let's just drop it here. It should be fine. The anesthetic effect is almost wearing off." Lin Lin clapped his hands. Tayo, let's go back." Hearing this, Tayo showed unusual resistance, which puzzled Lin Lin. "What's wrong?" "Roar. I was injured after fighting this guy, and then I carried it for such a long distance. I was tired and hungry, and I couldn't fly anymore." Lin Lin slapped his forehead. "I was careless. I think I saw some traces of the ankylosaur nearby. Let's go eat first. We leave after that." If there are any leftovers, just give them to this broken dragon. It's a good deal though. It can wake up and eat right away without having to hunt for itself." Roar! Naguri village. The capture mission successfully completed. Lin Lin and his team returned safely aboard the Black Dragon jump flight, just in time for the brigade's airship completion ceremony. Ahaha, finally done. We can finally continue our quest for the truth behind this thing. The brigade commander folded his arms, gazing at the whale-shaped airship before him, his excitement barely concealed. "Next stop is Centered Village, right?" The blacksmith walked over to the brigade commander and unfolded a map. "Master, don't look. It's not on this map." Gemma came bounding over, seemingly in high spirits over the completion of the airship. "No! What does that mean?" The brigade commander, who was poring over the map, was startled. How could he even reach his destination if he couldn't even find it? Centered Village is a Dragonite village located in the distant Siki country, close to the Fonglong region. This map only shows the old world portion, so of course it's missing. Isana. Don't worry, the complete map is on the Isana. Isana? The brigade commander repeated. That's the name of this airship. I told Yezi and the others about it a long time ago, Captain, didn't you know? The commander blushed. Ahem, they've been busy hunting lately, so I forgot to mention this little thing. That's how it should be. They're back. The Dragonman merchant and the cat chef finished packing their belongings and approached the leader. They happened to see Lin Lin and his group, who had just landed, and waved. Sophia, cradling the dragon egg, breathed heavily. Seeing this scene, she was stunned. What is this? The airship is finished. We can set sail anytime. Huh? But she couldn't help but lower her head, looking at the dragon egg in her arms. She had thought she'd stay in Nagili village for a while longer. The volcanic environment here would be more suitable for the child's growth. Just as she looked down, the dragon egg in her arm suddenly shook. Sophia, shock! Before she could react, the tiny crack in the eggshell rapidly expanded, spreading across the entire surface in the blink of an eye. Crack! A tiny, ultramarine head poked out of the dragon egg, a fragment of broken eggshell still resting on its head. Its large, round eyes darted around, meeting Sophia's gaze. The little dragonfly blinked and howled fiercely. Ah! Ah! So cute! Sophia was trembling with excitement. If she hadn't been afraid of startling the little dragonfly, her screams could have blown the roof off the house. Here's her eyes, full of love. Can you please tone it down a bit? Ah, dragon fetish. Well then again, this little dragonfly is indeed quite adorable, much cuter than that street delinquent adult dragonfly. And it seems like it actually thinks of Sophia as its mother. Lin Lin leaned over and reached out to poke the little creature's face. But the little dragonfly wasn't as sweet and docile with him as it was with Sophia. It bit his finger. Fortunately, the little creature wasn't very strong at birth, and Lin Lin's hand was protected by armor, so aside from a hand covered in saliva, it wasn't seriously injured. After finally pulling his hand back, Lin Lin's mouth twitched, speechless and choking. With his telepathic perception activated, he clearly understood why the little creature had bitten him so rudely. It disliked his strange, foul smell. Damn those fungus research beads. It just so happened that after this battle with the broken dragon, I gotten a lot of its shells. I quickly craft fungus research beads and replaced these things with serious side effects. The birth of the little broken dragon attracted the attention of the entire brigade. The airship, which had been the subject of everyone's excited discussion, was now replaced by this menacing little thing. This is the broken dragon's cub. It doesn't look that formidable. The brigade leader muttered to himself. It looks like it's quite a eater, meow. The cat chef, carrying a large iron pot, examined it carefully and said with certainty. So cute, so fierce. Gemma's face was filled with excitement. After witnessing the harmonious relationship between Lin Lin and Tiao Tiao, she was now quite open to the idea of people raising monsters. She was already thinking about picking one up and raising it herself, if possible. Will this thing explode? If it does, I wonder if the airship can withstand it. The blacksmith examined the little shattered dragon's fist closely. While there was little trace of slime mold, it was still a shattered dragon after all. So why did you go hunting and come back with a living broken dragon cub? The dragonman merchant raised a brow, feeling that everyone else's attention seemed a little off. Ahem, this is what's going on. Being surrounded by such a large crowd, the little broken dragon couldn't help but feel a little frightened. Some creatures freeze and shrink when frightened, minimizing their presence, while others bluff, baring their teeth and claws, appearing aggressive but weak. Clearly, this little broken dragon fell into the latter category. Its body was still in Sophia's arms, but its head had already turned toward the crowd, letting out a childish roar and waving its claws wildly. Sophia quickly rocked her body gently, caressing and patting the broken dragon's back with her palm, as if coaxing a child. Oddly enough, after Sophia's coaxing, the little broken dragon actually settled down, simply tucking its head into Sophia's arms and watching the crowd from the corner of its eye. As Sophia coaxed the little broken dragon, she slowly recounted the story of how she brought the little broken dragon back home when it was still an egg. I thought, since Tiao Tiao and Dakong had precedence, I might as well give it a try. Sophia said, turning to Lin Lin, remember when we first met in Jian Village? Back then, Teacher Mia proposed a research project on monster friendship. Lin Lin nodded. I remember, you said you leave the research on broken dragon friendship to you. Then he looked at the broken dragon cub huddled in her arms. But, is this really friendship? Chapter 437. Regardless, this newly hatched broken dragon already considered Sophia its mother. With Taio Taio as a living example, no one objected to Sophia's adoption of the broken dragon. Perhaps because the broken dragon cub was unexpectedly adorable, everyone in the brigade was quite fond of it. However, due to the broken dragon's birth, the brigade, originally scheduled to depart upon completion of the airship, had to slightly delay its departure. Besides concerns that this little creature, supposedly born in a volcanic region, wouldn't be able to adapt to the air, there was a more important reason. Shortly after Sophia, imitating Lin Lin's experience in caring for the sky, prepared immense meat for the little creature's first meal, a small explosion erupted in its mouth. This explosion might have been a mere tickle for a full-grown broken dragon, but for this newly born creature, it nearly killed it. Its shell shattered, blood gushed forth. If Sophia hadn't promptly administered life dust and regeneration potion, it would have perished at the speed of light. Before it even hatched, the slime mold from its mother's body, along with its dripping saliva, had already flowed into the crack in the eggshell and attached itself to it. At first, there was no explosion, simply because the slime mold was too thin. After Sophia fed it, the little dragonfly's nutrition was replenished, and the active factors in her saliva that catalyzed the growth of the slime mold increased, causing the slime mold in its mouth to grow rapidly, resulting in a small explosion. In the village's open space, the weakened little dragonfly lay in the center. The brigade gathered to help Sophia analyze the situation and offer advice. Lin carefully examined the little dragon's body with a magnifying glass for a moment, then said slowly, "Most of its body is covered in slime mold, but the concentration is low, making it difficult to detect with the naked eye. As long as the slime mold isn't completely removed, explosions like this will inevitably occur frequently until its newly formed shell is strong enough to withstand the force of the blast. Of course, there's also the possibility that it could not withstand the blast and died instantly, just like its older sibling from the same litter." However, Lin didn't say this. Firstly, he had to be considerate of Sophia's feelings, and secondly, a wild dragon would have had to grit its teeth and carry itself through an explosion, but this little creature had them by its side, various healing potions, and Sophia's meticulous care. The risk was much smaller than for its wild cousins. "Can we let this little guy take more baths, Meow? Not only will it wash off the slime mold, but if it stays in water, the risk of it exploding will be much less, Meow." Cat Chef knocked on the large iron pot he carried on his back. He used it to boil water in his free time, and the dragon merchant particularly enjoyed using it for bathing. "But that's only a temporary solution, isn't it?" Yeezy pondered for a moment, then said, "It can't stay submerged forever. The slime mold will explode as soon as it leaves the water. Only by allowing its carapace to transform into true obsidian armor can the problem be solved." Sophia nodded in agreement. Before she brought this little guy home, she had learned a great deal about the broken dragon because of her love for it. At that time, she believed that only by achieving a symbiotic relationship with the slime mold could a creature be considered complete and worthy of being called a broken dragon. Although this view had changed significantly after retrieving the little broken dragon and seeing it nearly dying from the explosion, and even if it hadn't been affected by the slime mold, it would have been fine if it just grew up peacefully. It seemed impossible to eliminate the slime mold. All they could do was let it adapt. What about attaching a mycological bead to it? Wouldn't that inhibit the slime mold's activity? And didn't you craft quite a few of them? The Dragonman merchant pondered for a moment before offering an idea. "That's a very constructive idea," the blacksmith praised. "Unfortunately, ornaments need to be embedded in specially designed holes in armor to remain effective. I can't just drill holes into this little thing. It seems the only way to quickly strengthen its shell is to find a way to do it." Gemma, leaning on a massive forging hammer, stared at the little broken dragon, sprawled on the ground, snoring softly. Thanks to various potions, the little creature's injuries had stabilized quickly, and it had already begun to heal. Gemma's words seemed to remind Sophia that since she couldn't prevent the little creature from suffering, she could only try to shorten its suffering. According to known ecological data, each time a dragon shatter heals, its shell becomes stronger than the previous one. Besides repeated regeneration, the reason these dragon shatters are able to maintain a symbiotic relationship with the slime mold is because minerals from the volcanic region are incorporated into their shells during the regeneration process, further enhancing their strength. Lin understood. In other words, if we just get some high-strength mineral materials, place them near it, and mix them in during its regeneration, we can help this little creature quickly withstand explosions, right? Yeza also looked thoughtful. "So, the shell composition of each wild dragonbreaker varies slightly depending on where it's grown. Meow. If we give this little creature some stronger ores than normal, could we shorten this time even further? And maybe, in the future, it become even stronger than its peers?" Lin and Yez exchanged glances, and said in unison, "Those ores from peak dragons. These are materials from ancient dragons. Their strength is undeniable. At the very least, they're on the level of pyroclasm. Even higher, like spirit crane stone, is not uncommon. There's also plenty of crimson kite stone and cloud dove stone, materials often used in ancient dragon equipment." "Huh?" Sophia was stunned. She wasn't sure what Lin meant. However, Lin had a slight misunderstanding. After a pause, he continued, "Although there's a lot of ore, considering the size this creature will eventually grow, it seems a bit insufficient. But it doesn't matter. It can't grow that big in such a short time. After this journey is over, I go find Mrs. Fongshan Dragon and bring back some ore." Seeing Sophia's growing bewilderment, Yeezy shook his head and briefly explained their previous encounter with Fongshan Dragon in Rockcrack. Everyone in the group couldn't help but widen their eyes. "So, we should return to East Dorma first and bring the ore with us, Meow?" Nyala turned her head to look at the Isana anchored in the village, then at the little dragon, and asked, "Shall we return to Donnarumma first?" That's a good idea. I've been wanting to open up trade routes to Donnarumma for a while now. The Dragonman merchant nodded in agreement. It's said that Donnarumma is the most prosperous city on the continent. I want to see it. Gemma's eyes lit up. Seeing everyone's support going to Donnarumma first, the brigade commander and the blacksmith exchanged glances and agreed, neither objecting. The matter was naturally settled. That solves the problem with this little creature, for now. But don't forget, once it reaches a certain concentration, the slime mold on its body will be transferred through contact. Just because it can withstand it doesn't mean we can. The blacksmith turned his gaze to Sophia, especially you. If you're caring for this little creature for a long time, you're almost certain to get slime mold on your body. Thankfully, we got a lot of carapaces after capturing the broken dragon. I put my other work aside, and quickly make a batch of fungus research beads. That way, you can feel more at ease when interacting with it. Sophia was stunned for a moment. She had been so focused on the little broken dragon that she had completely ignored this issue. Now that the blacksmith mentioned it, she came to her senses, and a look of gratitude flooded her face. But meow, Sophia's receptionist outfit isn't considered armor, right? Does it have holes for inserts? Date noticed a detail. Well, that's nothing to worry about. Gemma hefted the massive forging hammer onto her shoulder and explained, you might not know this, but the mascot's clothing is actually a type of hunter armor. Many female hunters also wear mascot clothing as their daily attire. Lin nodded slightly. It seemed to be true. In previous Monster Hunter games, the equipment the protagonist could craft seemed to have modern-day costumes for the poster girls. The most memorable screenshot was from the game Dawn. Hoya and Shueyun had traveled a long way by boat to their base in Elgard, where they sat on a bench enjoying bunny dumplings. Lian, the game's protagonist, stood nearby, wearing the same equipment as Hoya and Shueyun. Thinking of that picture, Lin subconsciously turned to look at Yezi beside him. Well, fortunately, games are ultimately different from reality. I think this girl's beauty is no less than Hoya and Shueyun's. And perhaps because the insect stick requires a high level of flexibility, her figure is quite slender for a hunter, completely different from his bulky figure. Wait a minute. Just as Lin was distracted, the brigade commander suddenly spoke, attracting everyone's attention. Well, have you considered that besides the little shattered dragon itself, those of us who might come into contact with it, its explosion might also harm other things? Everyone looked at the leader for a moment, then followed his gaze, landing on the nearby Isana. It seems right. What if the airship was suddenly blasted open by slime mold while flying in the sky? Lin thought about the scene, and suddenly felt a sudden realization. Don't worry. It's easy. Seeing everyone's serious deliberation, Gemma quickly waved her hand. The Isana still has plenty of space inside. We can renovate a separate room and add a blast-proof layer, specifically for the Shatter Dragon baby to rest. Just add 2 layers of explosion-proofing easy. We'd be done in less than 2 days. It was clear that the little girl was quite fond of the little Shatter Dragon, and she was trying every possible way to get it along for the trip with the brigade. The brigade commander rubbed his forehead and sighed helplessly. Alright then, let's do this. We spend another 2 days refitting it, then we go to East Daruma and pick up the ore Lin mentioned. Then we search for Centered Village. Great. Thank you, Captain. Sophia was overjoyed. The captain crossed his arms and smiled. It's okay. I'm curious too. How different is a shattered dragon raised by humans compared to a wild one? Over the past 2 days, the renovation project went smoothly. With the shattered dragon gone, the area around the village remained quite peaceful, with no other dangerous monsters approaching. Compared to the surrounding tranquility, the village was bustling with activity. The past 2 days had seen a flurry of activity, including, but not limited to, under Sophia's meticulous care, the little dragon's injuries had healed rapidly. Even after being blasted by its own slime mold once a day for 3 days, it barely seemed to suffer from the pain and remained quite lively. This little creature was incredibly energetic. At first, it simply played and played with Sophia. Then, as it gradually warmed up to the others in the group and realized they were its family and friends, it became even more cheerful. Sometimes he run to the blacksmith's forge to watch him forge iron, sometimes to the cat chef's wok, salivating at the aroma. Then he run around with his cat's sword, a date palm in his mouth, drawing meows and chases from the other side, engaging in a game of chase. Then he run to the open space where Lin and Yeezy practiced their daily routine, watching them sweat profusely as they worked out their moves, and then he casually imitate them. Even when he first caught sight of Tiao, he panicked and fled everywhere. But then, realizing the giant wasn't hostile, he at most snatched it off with his talons, when it climbed onto him and played around. Then, he completely let loose, like an unleashed husky. Well, it was pretty much the same as when Dakong was just born. Back then, Tiao Tiao was still the Yellow Speed Dragon King, and he often been forced to take care of the baby. By now, he'd gotten used to it. The only thing he had to be careful about was preventing scale dust from forming, lest the little creature get sick. If the other broken dragons in the wild knew that one of their kind had such a happy and fulfilling childhood, they'd probably be envious. In addition, during their free time over the past 2 days, Lin Lin and Yi Zi had also taken their pickaxes into the hunting grounds, bringing back some scattered, high quality ore to pile in the room reserved for the broken dragon, to use as material for its body strengthening. After battling the golden lion and the broken dragon, Tiao Tiao had grown even larger than he had just after hunting the armored dragon. While caring for the little broken dragon, Sophia also took Tiao Tiao's measurements. She speculated that as long as he continued to maintain adequate nutrition, Tiao Tiao should be able to undergo his second transformation soon. Chapter 438. 2 days passed quickly, and the Isana's modification was successfully completed. Finally, the entire brigade boarded the airship, preparing to proceed to East Dorma as planned. Compared to when they first arrived in Naguri village, the brigade had grown somewhat larger, with 2 new members. One was the little dragonfly Sophia brought with her. Lin Lin had originally suggested naming it Gilliman, as it had experienced a childhood that none of its kind had, a similarity between the two. However, Sophia felt the name didn't sit right, standing too far from names like Xiong'er, Tiao Tiao, Puff, and Dakong. After much deliberation, she finally chose Bang Bang, inspired by the explosive nature of slime mold. Lin Lin felt the name was a bit unlucky, but everyone else thought it was a good one. He could only helplessly complain, asking Sophia to keep a closer eye on the little creature and avoid any drama involving the 2 sides getting separated. Well, that shouldn't be the case. After all, there's neither Zon nor Piltover here. This is the Monster Hunter world. The second person is Gemma, the daughter of the Naguri village chief. Having grown up in this isolated village, the girl has long been curious about the vast world outside. Furthermore, she gets along very well with everyone in the brigade, has the blacksmith as her apprentice, and, fittingly, had designed the Isana herself. It was only natural for her to join the brigade. It was clear that Gemma was quite popular in the village. When the airship was ready to take off, nearly half the villagers came to bid Gemma farewell. Her father, a devoted daughter, burst into tears, feeling incredibly reluctant to let her go. However, he knew full well that the child had grown up, and would eventually venture out into the world. Only after the brigade chief consoled her, repeatedly assuring her that they would take good care of Gemma, did he finally give his daughter a firm hug and let go. Watching the airship's flames searing the air, its air bladders bulging as the massive reddish-brown whale slowly ascended, the villagers waved their hands, bidding farewell not only to Gemma, but to the entire brigade. Although the brigade's stay in Naguli village was brief, less than a month, the changes it had brought to the village were still vivid in their memory. The villagers, not being ungrateful, were naturally grateful. Although the brigade had to make an extra trip to Donnarumma than originally planned, it didn't actually take up much time. After all, the airship was incredibly fast. Leaving Naguli village in the early morning, the towering city could be seen by dusk. The only minor hiccup was that as the Isana approached, the accompanying black eclipse dragons leaped and alerted the city's defenses below, and crossbows and artillery shells were aimed in their direction. However, it seemed they had quickly received orders from their superiors. While they still gathered and vigilantly watched Tiao Tiao overhead, they ultimately lowered their guns and crossbows slightly, refraining from launching an impulsive attack. This made Lin Lin breathe a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Tiao Tiao had been whitelisted by the guild ahead of time. Otherwise, he'd probably have been shot into a hedgehog by now. He was well aware of the power of these heavy crossbows used in city defenses. Not even a mountain dragon's shell could easily ignore them. Soon, guided by signals from the ground, the Isana slowly descended to the outermost area of the airport. The surrounding area was cleared, and a line of defense guards surrounded it, ready for battle. Sophia had never seen such a large-scale event before, and she couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Yi Zi walked over to her, and gently patted her shoulder. "Don't be nervous, it's just normal procedure." It was indeed normal procedure. The last time they flew in from Rocklark, they were greeted by a similar scene. However, this time the defense team reacted much faster. After all, last time Tiao Tiao and Gujia disembarked from the airship, while this time they flew directly alongside it. As soon as he disembarked from the airship, Lin Lin saw an old acquaintance. "Mr. Supervisor?" The defense team's guards parted, and from among them emerged a listless old dragon man. It was none other than the guild supervisor in charge of the lower hunters gathering in East Dorma. The old dragon looked at Lin Lin, then at Tiao Tiao, who lay quietly beside the airship. He tried to speak several times, but finally shook his head helplessly and changed the subject. Barbear has reported your achievements recently. You dealt with that extreme thousand-blade dragon and nipped a major crisis in the bud. You did a great job. Then the director of the Mad Dragon Virus Research Institute also sent back news. The first batch of trial antidotes for the Mad Dragon virus has been produced. Once verified to be flawless, the official antidote will soon be delivered to you hunters fighting the disaster on the front lines. From the discovery of Mad Dragon disease, to the intelligence on the Black Dragon, to the development of the antidote, all of this is inseparable from your contributions. You are heroes of humanity. Thank you for your hard work. As for the reward, the Great Elder hasn't decided yet. He simply wanted to know if you have any requests. The guild leader gently patted Lin Lin's arm. Without this young hunter, the Mad Dragon virus would likely have spread rapidly, eventually causing a disaster that would have swept the entire continent. Such an achievement was unmatched even by many high-ranking hunters. Actually, I didn't do anything. Lin Lin scratched his head sheepishly. In reality, upon closer inspection, he had merely done what he could. Whether it was reporting the Mad Dragon's transformation into a male fire dragon, defeating the extreme Thousand Blades dragon while searching for Tayo Tayo, or bringing Tayo Tayo, who had evolved into a black erosion dragon, back to Barbear to provide information for antidote research, these were merely small, self-serving acts. He was hardly a hero. So you don't want the reward? The usually serious guild leader cracked a joke for once. It was clear that he genuinely recognized and liked the young man before him. Ahem, I still want this. Lin Lin coughed dryly. After all, if you can get something for nothing, you'd be a fool not to take advantage. No, that shouldn't be called taking advantage, it should be called. Never mind. Just get the general idea. Don't bother a hunter like him with quibbles. What? You said he was still a college student when he traveled through time? Come on, who doesn't know that a college student's eyes are often clear and foolish? As for what I want. Lin Lin pondered for a moment, but realized he didn't really want anything. He turned to Yi behind him for help. Yi spread her hands helplessly. What was she looking at? Just being able to hunt with brother Lin Lin was already satisfying. If there was anything she wanted, it was probably to hunt with him forever. Lin Lin scratched his head and pondered for a long time. Finally, he sighed and looked tentatively at the guild leader. Well, I can't think of it right now. Can I save it for now? I can make it happen when I think of it. The guild leader was stunned for a moment, then burst out laughing. He then patted Lin Lin's arm vigorously. Okay, save it for later. When you've made up your mind, come back and make your request. Gathering his composure, he turned his attention to Tiao Tiao. Is this the Yellow Speed Dragon King from back then? The guild already has a basic understanding of what happened to it. I never imagined there would be a monster capable of causing such a dramatic change in the life form of other monsters. Well, Tiao Tiao's case is likely an extremely rare occurrence, so the guild doesn't need to worry too much. At least until a new Tianhui dragon is born, there will be no new Black Eclipse dragons. The guild leader nodded. That's true. The director of the Research Institute also stated this in his letter. But Tayo Tayo is now a standard large monster. When it flew over here with you, it caused quite a bit of panic. While we managers understand that it can coexist peacefully with us, it will probably take quite some time for the general public to accept this. Before then, if Tayo Tayo is allowed to live in your team's villa as before, it will probably cause quite a stir. After the guild leader's words, Lin Lin roughly understood. After all, East Aruma is the continent's premier capital. The citizens here are not on the same level as those in Barbear, let alone the small village of Naguli. Just because the Earth Dragons of Naguli accept Tayo Tayo's presence, doesn't mean the general public will do the same. After all, they weren't as perceptive as I was, and in their long-held beliefs, monsters were ferocious, brutal creatures that devoured humans without blinking an eye, save for the long-tamed, almost threatening herbivorous creatures like the Ryugan bird Bobo. Lin Lin sighed softly and nodded. I understand. We're only here to get some things this time, so we won't stay long. He glanced at the defense guards, who seemed to be standing straight and meticulously, but their eyes couldn't help but glance at Tayo Tayo. So, for the time being, Tayo Tayo needs to stay in the designated resettlement area, correct? The guild leader sighed softly. This is unavoidable, but the guild is already working on a solution. A world where humans and monsters can coexist harmoniously isn't far off. He lowered his voice slightly and said, "Do you remember what I told the Great Elder about the bonding stone?" Lin nodded, his palm unconsciously touching the sky blue gem fixed to the groove on his left wrist armor. Lin had the blacksmith modify this groove specifically, so that he wouldn't have to reach into his item bag every time. We all think training riders is worth a try. The first experimental training is already underway, and we're currently selecting the first group of riders. Lin blinked. What did he mean by suddenly saying this? Hadn't he already said almost everything he could? Why was he still trying to get more information? But Lin quickly recovered. No, they were just talking about a world where humans and monsters coexist harmoniously. So, was this actually the guild's intention to train riders and show the world the possibility of this future? But dealing with monsters still carries certain risks. We can't just set it up in the inner city like we do with hunter training camps. According to our plan, we're going to establish a pilot rider training base in the suburbs of East Dorma, directly connected to East Dorma via a specially designed passage. At this point, Lin couldn't help but nod slightly, presumably anticipating what the director was about to say. So, once this training base is completed, we can let Jump and Sky live there, right? The guild leader nodded with a smile. That's right, but it's only a construction plan right now. It's still quite some time before it's finished. Until then, we have to put them in a difficult position for now. Then can I live there with Bakugo? Sophia, who had been eavesdropping, couldn't contain her excitement and interrupted the conversation, clutching the little dragon. Bao? The guild leader pushed his glasses. He read over and over the information about the comrades Lin had mentioned. Bear 2, Tayo, Puff, and Dakong. Didn't they have a name like Bao? But then, his eyes met with the little dragon in Sophia's arms. The little creature had just disembarked from the airship with Sophia when he saw a large group of solemn guards surrounding them. He subconsciously felt a little intimidated, but when he looked back and saw Sophia's mother and all the other uncles and aunts from the brigade standing nearby, his confidence immediately bolstered. He glared at the leader, his eyes fixed firmly on his own. Well, here's what happened. Lin briefly recounted the story of how he retrieved the little creature, then concluded, before the hunt, we didn't realize it was a newly laid broken dragon. We only discovered it after we captured it, still in its egg. If left alone, without its mother's protection, the little creature would almost certainly have died. Retrieving this egg shouldn't be considered an ecological disaster, right? The guild leader rubbed his brow. This was a bit overwhelming. He needed to digest it. Know what's going on with this kid? Does he have some kind of succubus-like physique? With so many hunters across the continent, why do so many of these cases of finding and raising monsters happen so frequently around you? That's unlikely, but I think Sophia could be on the list for rider training. Chapter 439. Me? Sophia pointed at herself, then asked somewhat unsurely, can I do it? Lin looked at Sophia, then down at the little dragon she held in her arms, his lip curling. Although it had only been a few days, a deep bond had already formed between this man and this dragon. Perhaps Sophia herself hadn't realized how attached the little dragon was to her. If you can't do it, I don't think anyone else can. The guild leader glanced at Lin in surprise. He hadn't expected him to give such high praise to a civilian like Sophia. As the first rider to enter the guild site, Lin's opinion undoubtedly held considerable reference value. If that's the case, then it couldn't be better. Lin, accompanied by Tayo, led the leader to their temporary shelter. The other members of the brigade dispersed to do their own things, leaving only the brigade commander and the blacksmith behind on the airship. Lin initially wondered what kind of temporary shelter Tayo could find, but as he walked, he suddenly felt a strange familiarity with the route. Looking up, he saw the majestic Grand Elder's Hall looming before him. Lin, huh? What's so surprising? With Tayo's current size, a normal building wouldn't be able to accommodate him, right? But this is the Grand Elder's Hall, after all. The Hunter Guild's highest authority, the very core of East Dorma, the seat of the Grand Elder. And why are you letting Tayo stay here temporarily? What's the problem? This is the Grand Elder's personal order. Are you dissatisfied? No. Entering the Great Elder's Hall, Lin naturally met the Great Elder. He was still seated in the center of the hall, seemingly unchanged from their last meeting. Huff. Our great hero has returned. The Great Elder seemed in good spirits. After all, ever since learning of the Raging Dragon disease's emergence, he had been deeply concerned, fearing it would escalate into a devastating catastrophe. But in less than a month, a steady stream of good news had arrived, and the heavy weight weighing on his heart had lifted. Naturally, he seemed a bit relieved, even joking around. The Great Elder stroked his beard, reviewing the decisions made recently. Thanks to early detection, high attention, and swift action, the spread of the raging dragon disease had been effectively contained. The antidote for the virus had also been initially developed. According to information sent back by the top team 2 days ago, they had also located the Black Eclipse dragon, the source of the disease. It wasn't long before news of their successful subjugation reached us. The spread of the virus was a foregone conclusion. Even if there were still other Black Eclipse dragons besides it, and the jumping one before them, with the intelligence and experience they now possessed, they could be quickly suppressed even if they reemerged. Great Elder. Just as the Great Elder's thoughts were swirling, Lin bowed, bringing his thoughts back. The Great Elder stroked his beard and said with a smile, "The supervisor said you haven't decided on a reward yet?" Lin nodded helplessly. "Haha, no rush. Think about it. When you figured it out, you can come to me anytime to redeem it." The Great Elder glanced at his wakizashi and thought, if this kid used a katana, he could give him the slashing old sword as a token of honor. Of course, a replica, human-sized. No one but a dragon man like the Great Elder could wield the wakizashi he held. After a pause, the Great Elder looked back at Tiao, who was standing beside Lin. Sensing the Great Elder's gaze, Tiao subconsciously tensed, his muscles involuntarily tensing. Even without sight, he could sense that the dragon man before him was formidable. Noticing Tiao's subtle change, Lin quickly reached out and stroked the scales on his head, whispering soothingly, "It's okay, don't be nervous. The Great Elder is a good person and won't do anything to you." Under Lin's gentle caress, Tiao quickly calmed down, no longer focusing on the Great Elder. Instead, he swept his tail and took up residence in the hall. Hoo. Although I've seen this in reports many times, seeing it in person for the first time still surprises me. The Great Elder smiled, his tone tinged with emotion. "Don't worry, Tiao won't be in any danger with me. My place is spacious enough, so it won't feel cramped. By the way, I just heard that the receptionist Sophia, who was traveling with you, also brought a broken dragon cub with her." Lin thought the Great Elder was also planning to have Bao stay in the Great Elder Hall like Tiao, so he coughed lightly. "That little creature is less than a meter long. With Sophia watching over it, it won't cause any trouble." The Great Elder couldn't help but laugh. "I'm just asking to understand the situation. Why are you so nervous? Do I look like an unkind person?" Lin had to force a smile to hide his embarrassment. At that moment, the guard at the hall entrance suddenly trotted over, approached the Great Elder, and whispered something in a low voice. After hearing this, the Great Elder uttered an "oh," a smile flickering across his eyes, as he nodded gently, let him in. Just as Lin was curious about who had requested to see the Great Elder, he turned and saw a muscular man walk in. Master?" The man Lin addressed as Master must have been Kevin, still recovering from his injuries in Dongdaruma. But then again, it had been almost 6 months since he'd been severely injured by Long, so his injury should have healed by then. Kevin's surprise was no less than Lin's. After all, he'd been cooped up at home for too long and felt almost recovered. He was just about to ask the Great Elder for a mission to stretch his muscles, but who would have thought that upon entering, he'd see his restless disciple standing before him. He assumed the boy had accepted some sort of mission, and was still wandering around. "Who, Kevin, you arrived just in time." The Great Elder didn't give the master and disciple time to exchange pleasantries, wanting to catch up and chat after leaving the Great Elder's hall. Kevin was stunned. He had come to see the Great Elder to ask for a mission, but why did it sound like the Great Elder also wanted to see him? "Lin is your disciple, and I need your advice on some matters." The Great Elder spoke slowly, briefly explaining the turmoil caused by the mad dragon disease. At first, Kevin was confused. He was only injured and temporarily unable to enter the hunting grounds, not retired. He had a general understanding of these matters, so why would he need to recount them? Then, hearing about Lin's role in this still unresolved turmoil, he fell into a moment of bewilderment. "No, you brat. In less than 2 months, you've managed to accomplish so much, and with this frequency, you're truly not taking your life seriously. Others who accept 1 hunting commission a month are considered diligent, but you've managed to take down 3, not to mention Berserker Fire Dragon, Extreme Thousand Blades Dragon, and Black Eclipse Dragon, each of which is fatal if you're not careful. What kind of hunter plays it like that?" Well, Kevin didn't know that in the remaining half of those 2 months, Lin had hunted a ghost frog, a shadow spider, an armored dragon, a crimson armored beast, and captured a shattered dragon in Naguli village, even engaging in a fight with a golden lion. If he knew, he doubted this kid was even human. But Kevin was still too narrow-minded, viewing the situation solely from a hunter's perspective, completely ignoring Tayo, who lay idly and drowsily nearby. With this young ancient dragon as his helper, Tayo shouldered a significant portion of the pressure in these battles. Kevin's mind raced, but the great elder before him continued his speech. According to Julius's assessment, that ultimate thousand-blade dragon possessed power comparable to that of an ancient dragon. 6 individuals participated directly in its subjugation, including Lin. Prior to this, Lin had participated in 2 of Rocklak's peak dragon interception battles, and had a brief direct confrontation with the Mist Dragon on the spiritual peak. Kevin's eyes widened as he came to his senses. He could no longer fail to grasp the great elder's intentions as he listened. Could it be that you wish to promote this boy to 6 stars? The great elder nodded slowly. Lin has faced ancient dragons more than once, proving his courage. This time, with his successful subjugation of the ultimate thousand-blade dragon, he's also proven his strength. He possesses all the qualities necessary to ascend to the rank of High Hunter. But, isn't this a little too early? This kid is still too young. If refuting the great elder right then, and there wouldn't have been such a shady situation, Kevin wouldn't have chosen such tactful words. To outsiders, ascending to the rank of High Hunter at such a young age must be incredibly prestigious. But he himself was a High Hunter, and the great elder was the guild's highest authority. They were all well aware of one fact: High Hunters often live their lives surrounded by ancient dragons. No matter how talented or powerful they are, every mission involving an ancient dragon carries a risk of death if they're not careful. Even if you do your best, if luck isn't on your side, you still end up dead. It's safe to say that fewer than 1 in 10 High Hunters can reach retirement peacefully. As for his disciple, he was only in his early 20s. He still had plenty of time to enjoy his youth, and shouldn't devote the rest of his life to battling ancient dragons so early. The great elder remained silent for a moment. Kevin's words were exactly what he was thinking. From a small coastal town to a major continental capital, East Dorma had flourished under his rule. How could he not understand the significance of his promotion? But time was running out. Various signs in recent years indicated that the dark clouds hovering over ancient Shred were beginning to resurface. The last Ling Feng incident also concealed traces of another unknown taboo. Time left for humanity was truly limited. At most, it was probably less than 20 years. Faced with the imminent threat, the rider training program mentioned by the guild leader was a new approach they were trying. Furthermore, maximizing the guild's manpower before the threat arose was a top priority. And the great elder's gaze fell upon Lin again. This child might be somehow connected to that unknown taboo. Even if he didn't rush for promotion, his future fate would undoubtedly be entangled with the ancient dragon. The great elder wavered for a moment, then spoke again. So, Lin, what are your thoughts? Ah? Me? Lin pointed at himself, and the great elder nodded slowly. Lin's brow furrowed. To be honest, if it were simply a matter of adding a star to his hunter's notes, and allowing him to retain his current freedom, he would definitely not refuse. But in this world, promotion meant more responsibility and less free time. The danger was a secondary factor. He hadn't been so suicidal before. The main reason was that he didn't want to become a firefighter so early, fighting fires all over the continent. When he first reached a low rank as a hunter, he refrained from revealing his abilities for the same reason. He loved freedom. But that certainly wasn't the right thing to say. Lin pondered for a moment, choosing his words carefully. In fact, I don't think my strength or experience are enough to qualify as a top-level hunter. My achievements are primarily due to the help of my companions. I don't think the strength of Sky Jumper and the others can be counted as my own. Is that so? Indeed, it's said that before the thousand-blade dragon reached its limit, it was this pitch-black creature before him who fought it single-handedly for a long time. The great elder turned his gaze to Jumper, who was snoring soundly, unconcerned with their discussion, and nodded slightly, approvingly. In that case, then you should continue to train for a while. When Kevin deemed you're ready, I add another star to your hunter's notes. Well, that's enough for now. I'm a little tired. The great elder waved his hand, and began to dismiss the others. Lin and Kevin exchanged a glance, bowed, and then exited the great elder's hall. Before leaving, Lin gently woke the sleeping Tiao and whispered, "You stay here for the next 2 days. Be good and don't upset the great elder. We come back for you once we prepared everything." Ah. Tiao rested his head on his folded front paws and yawned, indicating he understood. It's just a matter of letting him stay here, eating and sleeping. Easy. That big beetle is good at it, so I can do it too. Chapter 440. Leaving the Grand Elder's Hall, Kevin looked back at Lin Lin with a complicated expression. The scene of finding this kid in the Jian Creek area was still vivid in his mind. Back then, he was like a wild felon, weak, pitiful, and helpless. In just 2 years, he had grown to this point. If it weren't for his help, this kid would have broken the record for the youngest hunter. Even if he waited another 2 years, it seemed he would still break the record. Thinking of this, Kevin clapped his hands with a rather melancholic look. Patting Lin Lin on the shoulder, he sighed. It's true that the new generation pushes the old generation forward. It's been less than 2 months since we last met, and you've experienced so much. Come on, tell me about your great achievements. Lin Lin glanced down. Didn't the Great Elder just tell you all? Kevin rolled his eyes. The Great Elder only gave a dry outline. I want the detailed version. Lin Lin had no choice but to recollect briefly, eliminating any trivial details and recounting the exciting and fascinating parts. That's about it. I won't be back in East Daruma for a few days this time. I be leaving soon. So your next stop is that village of Sinard? Lin Lin's eloquence was quite good. Listening to his story was like listening to a storyteller. Even at this point, when Lin Lin finished and fell silent, he felt a little unsatisfied and wanted to continue the conversation, but after searching his mind for a moment, he couldn't quite recall the village they were talking about. Yes, it's in Shichi country, near the Fenglong area. You have to cross a sea to get there. Lin Lin briefly introduced himself, then turned his gaze to the muscular man beside him. By the way, master, what were you doing at the Grand Elder's Hall? He felt as if the Great Elder hadn't been aware of Kevin's presence at that moment. Kevin's body stiffened at this. Boo-hoo, the Great Elder's desire to promote Lin Lin had shocked him so much that he completely forgot what he had planned to discuss at the Grand Elder's Hall. Kevin couldn't help but turn his head to glance back at the Grand Elder's Hall atop the mountain, then at the long staircase. After a moment's silence, he shook his head. Never mind, it's nothing. Lin Lin slowly asked a question. Kevin pondered for a moment, then suddenly turned to Lin Lin and said, Please ask your captain if he can give me a ride on our departure. Lin Lin, huh? Do you want to visit Zinard village too? Kevin waved his hand. No, I want to visit Jiangbua village. Jiangbua village? Yes, didn't Reese go to Jiangbua village earlier? He said he couldn't handle the trouble there on his own, so I'm going to see if I can help. Jiangbua village is located on the southeast coast of the continent. If you're crossing the sea to Zinard village, you should pass by Jiangbua village. It shouldn't take much of a detour, and you can even resupply there. Just tell him, and I think your captain will agree. Lin Lin nodded, and said he let the captain know after he collected his belongings. Jiangbua village. Even a 7-star hunter couldn't handle this trouble. Could it be another ancient dragon? These are truly troubled times. After parting with Kevin, Lin Lin found Yizi and the 2 cats, and returned to the walled single-family villa in the residential area. The door's locked, meow. Do you have the key, meow? Niala glanced at the large lock made of tupololith hanging on the door, a look of hesitation on her face. Yezi smiled, reached into the flower pot by the door, fumbled around for a moment, and pulled out a key still stained with dirt. He gestured to Nialu, then unlocked the door, and the 2 cats filed in. Brave and Cheyenne had previously mentioned in their letter that they were going to Moga village. With their departure, the animals at home were left unattended, so they had to take them aboard. Calculating the time, they should be arriving by now, right? With their departure, Guga, the axe beetle, Yezi's Fong hounds Haku and Fukuki rabbit Afu, and Brave's Fong hound Song Xiang were all taken to Moga village. The villa, uninhabited for a month, seemed particularly deserted. Despite the deserted atmosphere, Lin Lin found the place quite tidy. Walking in, he noticed the coffee table was barely dusty, as if someone regularly cleaned it. Considering that Ziyuan had bought the house, and was the daughter of a wealthy guild, it wasn't surprising someone would clean it. Although their main purpose was to retrieve the ore needed to strengthen the little dragon's shell, since they were already home, they naturally couldn't just take these items. For example, the 2 shield axes, 1 ice and 1 water, and the Thunder Wolf dragon heavy armor, which had been placed on the weapon rack in the room, had been too hasty to find Yizi before. Now, they could take them all with them. If they encountered monsters with strong stat absorption, like the armor dragon, they would be much easier to defeat. Lin Lin and Yeza quickly packed a large box, and carried it to the living room on the first floor, waiting for Yezi to finish packing so they could leave together. Yezi's movements were still quick, and not long after, she and Nyala came down. However, unlike Lin Lin, they didn't carry a large box, only a large bag of ore. Don't you need to bring equipment? Lin Lin asked concernedly. Yezi shook his head slightly. No, My 2 best sets of armor are on the Isana. The rest of them are no longer up to the current combat requirements. As for weapons, there was no need to mention them. While the Dragon Bone Staff had decent dragon attributes, its overall strength was just SOSO, far behind the Horned Dragon Staff. The Insect Wielder didn't require specialized attribute enhancements like the Shield Axe. High physical strength was sufficient. The attributes were just a bonus. Seeing Yi Zi's lackluster expression, Lin Lin couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong?" Yi Zi sighed softly. "I miss Xiaobai and Ah Fu a little. I didn't feel much before when I was with the rest of the group. Now that I'm back here, I realize I haven't seen them in 2 months. I've never been away from them this long before. I wonder when Brave and Cheyenne will be able to bring them back. It might be a while." According to the letter, they went to Moga village to try to help in Xia's hometown deal with the sea dragon that was causing the earthquake. However, Lin Lin knew very well that while sea dragons, as the kings of the sea, were indeed powerful, they simply couldn't cause earthquakes. According to the plot of the 3rd episode, the real cause of the earthquake in Moga village was a massive ancient dragon, the Great Sea Dragon, which repeatedly struck the seabed with its horns, causing the rock tremors on which Moga village sat. The sea dragon did this because its right horn had grown abnormally large for unknown reasons, severely obstructing its vision. To reduce its horn, it repeatedly rammed the seabed, until King Nijua dived into the deep sea alone and broke the sea dragon's right horn in battle, forcing it to retreat. Now that the plot of 3 tier has begun to unfold, will Brave and Cheyenne encounter the fledgling legendary king of Naiju in Moga village? Damn, I suddenly want to join in the fun. Let's wait until the group reaches its end. If they haven't returned by then, we can go to Moga village and join in the fun. But the end of the journey is to uncover the truth about the captain's pure white dragon scale, right? If we don't find out by this trip to Zinard village, will this journey ever end? Lin Lin saw the faint trace of worry on Yi Zi's face, and couldn't help but reach out to help tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. He said gently, "Don't worry. I have a strong feeling that we will find the answer in Zinard village. That day won't be too far away." Yi Zi looked up at Lin Lin, a smile playing on her lips as she nodded vigorously. "Yes." Beside her, Yi Zhao silently turned her head away and shook her head. "What a cheesy couple. And my boss is the boss, so unlucky." Lin Lin quickly returned to the Isana with his belongings, only to discover that, in addition to the captain and the blacksmith who stayed behind, Sophia had also returned. After asking around, he discovered that she returned to Donnarumma primarily to have some fun. She didn't have many friends, and Anxiel was her best friend. But upon further inquiry, he discovered that her friend had already returned home. Shopping was boring without my best friend. It was more fun to hurry back to look after the little dragon than to watch the divas perform at the theater. 2 days flew by, during which time the cat chef, the dragon merchant, and Gemma all finished their work and returned to the Isana. Only Gemma, seeing such a bustling metropolis for the first time, seemed a little reluctant to leave. Lin Lin told the team leader about Kevin's request for a ride, and the team leader readily agreed. After Gemma finally returned to the ship, Lin Lin rushed to Kevin's place to pick him up and bring Tayo Tayo along for the official departure. Seeing his good disciple was about to take him on his journey, Kevin quickly packed his things. Actually, there wasn't much to pack. Just bring money, and you can buy items anywhere. His main weapons and armor. His black horn dragon shield axe and armor dragon armor were both destroyed by Lanlong's water cannon. With no other options, he could only change into the fire dragon side crab suit he long since put away. The same suit Lin Lin was wearing when he found him 2 years ago. As for his weapon, after some careful consideration, he settled on the standard defense force combined shield axe. The grenade bottle shield axe was versatile enough, with decent power, and the added bonus of explosive properties, making it quite useful when he didn't have a more effective weapon. Putting on his armor and carrying his shield and axe, Kevin stretched his body and sighed helplessly. In the past 2 years, he had first fought the flame dragon, then recovered from his injuries, then fought the storm dragon, and then recovered from his injuries. 2 sets of his equipment had been scrapped. As a result, the materials he got could only be used to make some pieces of protective gear. Although they were ancient dragon equipment, the disorganized combination was too out of place. After some hesitation, Kevin finally decided to put these materials at the bottom of the box and see if there was a chance to get the remaining materials in the future to make a complete set. Bang! Just as the two were about to leave, the door suddenly flung open. The noise startled Lin Lin. He looked over to see an enraged female hunter in a swift dragon suit. "Are you sneaking off again without my knowledge?" Feeling the tangible resentment emanating from her, Lin Lin instinctively retreated and closed the door behind him, leaving the resentment to his master alone. I don't know what the two of them talked about, but 10 minutes later, when the door opened again, Rachel emerged with a beaming smile, her face radiant with sunshine, as if the resentment Lin Lin had just felt was a complete illusion. Little Lin Lin, your captain wouldn't mind taking on another hitchhiker, would he? Lin Lin nodded weakly. Rachel raised her hand and tapped Lin Lin's helmet. What are we waiting for? Let's go! Lin Lin glanced at Rachel, then at Kevin, whose face was furrowed in the room. He said nothing and silently led the way. Speaking of which, when he first met Rachel, she seemed to have followed Kevin's footsteps to Jaden Village, only to realize she was a step too late. Kevin had already gone off to fight the Flame Queen Dragon. If she hadn't run into him, she might have rushed straight to the scene of their battle. He wasn't sure what happened before, but from the past 2 years of observation, Lin Lin could clearly sense that their relationship had grown closer. Especially after Master was injured in the battle with Lan Long, Rachel had always taken good care of him. And from what Yezo had observed at the hero's celebration, Kevin didn't say it to Rachel, but he was also keeping it in his heart. He just didn't know why, but these two hadn't broken the ice yet. Lin Lin turned his head and glanced at Rachel again, thinking to himself. Not only did she not break the ice, she even nearly ran away secretly. I wonder what Master was thinking. Does she not want to be tied down like this, and want to retain her freedom to roam freely? In other words, this ability to listen to inner voices can only serve as a translation for humans. Otherwise, he would have to listen carefully to find out what was going on. Back on the Isana, he introduced Rachel to the captain. As the airship prepared to lift off, Lin Lin rushed to the Grand Elder's hall and bailed Tayo Tayo out of the jail position. Huh? Why do I feel like Tayo Tayo has grown a little since I last saw you in 2 days? Chapter 441. Tayo Tayo still looked like he had barely woken up. Noticing Lin Lin's arrival, he first nuzzled his head into Lin Lin's arms. Then, as if that wasn't enough, after a moment's thought, he rested his head on Lin Lin's shoulder. Lin Lin's well-trained body was strong enough to keep him steady. If it were an ordinary person, they would have been crushed to the ground, vomiting blood and unable to get up. You're not mistaken. It has indeed grown a lot. Lin Lin looked back, and was surprised to find that the Great Elder had not sat on his throne, as he had for millennia. Instead, he had walked a short distance behind him, looking at Tayo Tayo with a hint of a smile. Seeing Lin Lin's confusion, the Great Elder explained, We've been feeding it some snacks these past 2 days, and it shed its skin yesterday. As for the old scales it shed, I've had them collected. Consider them its food allowance for the next 2 days. How about that? Lin Lin naturally had no objection. As long as Tiao Tiao continued to grow, the old scales would surely accumulate. Once the material reached a certain point, it would simply be a number. It wouldn't be a big deal for the Great Elder to take some of them. What he was concerned about was Tiao Tiao's molting. It hadn't been long since he shed his skin after the last battle with the Armored Dragon. Even though he'd gone through 2 fierce battles with the Golden Lion and the Shattering Dragon, hadn't Sophia said he still needed to wait a while to replenish his nutrients? So soon? Lin Lin pondered for a moment, then suddenly remembered. Hadn't the Great Elder just mentioned feeding it some snacks and using its old scales as food allowance? So, can I ask what you fed it? The Great Elder seemed to reflect for a moment before slowly speaking. Not much. Besides regular raw meat, I just fed it a few Dragon Jade, Bird Dragon Jade, and Beast Jade. Lin Lin, No wonder. In the Monster Hunter world, anything with the word Jade in it represents the crystallization of a monster's inner power, containing a wealth of energy that can be used as the core of weapons and armor. Feeding it a few Dragon Jade, Bird Dragon Jade, and Beast Jade. Lin Lin had reason to suspect that with these snacks fed by the Great Elder, Tayo Tayo wouldn't need to eat for a long time. The energy directly absorbed from the Dragon Jade would be enough to sustain his daily activities. He might even have enough energy for his next molt. Speechless, Lin Lin could only reach out and pat the large head resting on his shoulder. Why don't you thank the Great Elder? Do you realize how much of a privilege you've taken? Tayo Tayo raised his head in bewilderment, glancing at Lin Lin, unsure what was going on, and why he suddenly had to thank him. But since Lin Lin had said so, he casually let out a low, purring sound in the Great Elder's direction. The Great Elder stroked his beard, observing the scene, a kind smile crossing his face. He nodded. Well, the Great Whale is still waiting for you in the sky. Go quickly. I wish you a wonderful journey. And so, under the Great Elder's gaze, a pitch-black shadow flew out from the mountaintop. Its cloak-like wings flapped a few times before it caught up with the circling Isana and sailed alongside it. 3 days later. Looking down from the sky, in the distance, the azure waters undulate, and below, a vast peninsula surrounded on 3 sides by the sea. This is Kevin and Rachel's destination, Gyeongbwa Village. Unlike the continent's foremost capital, Dongdaruma, Gyeongbwa Village is a newly built village, built from the ground up in recent years. It lacks the massive, imposing walls, the airships circling in such numbers that they require specialized management and planning, and even less impressive buildings like the Grand Palace, the Grand Theater, or the Royal Library. Instead, it possesses a group of like-minded people, united by their dreams and determination to forge a better future, united by their combined courage and determination. Gyeongbwa Village's population is relatively small, and the buildings are relatively sparse. Most of the structures are made of wood, blending seamlessly with the dense palm trees that grow on the island. While somewhat rough-hewn, it creates a soothing and relaxing atmosphere, unlike Dongdaruma, where the grayish-white walls, concrete, and buildings are everywhere, which can become depressing after a while. Without the dedicated airship harbors of major cities, like Lokrak and Dongdaruma, the Isana, after circling, had to find an open area large enough to accommodate the craft and slowly land. Airships seemed a rarity to the residents of Gyeongbwa Village, rarely seen. Therefore, upon noticing the landing of such a uniquely shaped airship, those villagers with nothing else to do gathered around, observing the Isana and whispering to one another. Some villagers, who had never seen an airship before, gazed up at the slowly descending whale and exclaimed, "Is this an airship? It seems a little different than I imagined." Of course, some villagers who had been to more prosperous areas and had seen airships before corrected him, saying, "No, it doesn't look like a normal airship either. This is the first time I've seen an airship shaped like a giant red whale." "Wait, did you see that? What is that?" Other sharp-eyed villagers stared intently at the airship's deck. As the airship descended, the initial black edge on the deck gradually expanded, revealing its true form, a giant, pitch-black dragon. It looks like a monster, still alive. Was it captured and temporarily placed on the deck? It's terrifying just looking at it. This creature feels even more dangerous than the Earth Queen the village brought back earlier. They captured the monster, but they didn't even tie it up with ropes? What if it wakes up? Just as the villagers were whispering among themselves, the airship had already landed. A slight tremor from beneath it woke Tayo, who was resting his head on his front paws. Because they weren't traveling at full speed to conserve fuel, it took 3 days and 3 nights to reach Gyeongbwa Village from Dongdaruma, across half the continent. Only the most skilled flying dragon, the male fire dragon, could endure such a long air journey. Tayo could fly, but his stamina wasn't as good, and he would tire after flying for half a day. Fortunately, the hull of the Isana is large enough, and the space on the deck is very open. When Tiao is tired of flying, he can land on the deck to rest and restore his strength. For example, at this moment, although he felt that the airship seemed to have landed, Tiao just subconsciously raised his head and looked around, and quickly put his head back. It's too short a sleep, not enough to relieve fatigue. I need to take another nap first. Little did they know that Tayo's unconscious glance startled the onlookers. Some of the more alert ones were already running to find the village hunters to prevent this guy from going crazy after waking up. The ladders were set up, and the members of the brigade climbed down one by one. The surrounding villagers, because of Tayo's presence, subconsciously did not dare to get too close, which created a barrier between the two groups. For a moment, the atmosphere was tense. However, the standoff did not last long. A well-equipped hunter was called out from his home by the villagers and hurried to the scene, weapons on his back. With the hunter's arrival, the villagers breathed a sigh of relief. In the absence of the village chief, the hunter seemed to be their backbone. The hunter glanced around and realized the scene wasn't as he imagined, with monsters rampaging through the village. He breathed a sigh of relief. He glanced up at Tiao, who was still soundly asleep on the deck of the Isana, then gathered himself, stepped forward, and approached the brigade. "Greetings, guests from afar. I'm Toro, a 5-star hunter." As the brigade leader, it was his responsibility to negotiate. While he explained his purpose to Toro, the others observed the hunter. Yezi glanced at the small round shield strapped to his arm, then at the short sword strapped to his waist. She felt a sense of novelty. After all, a one-handed sword combines both offense and defense, offering flexibility and balance. However, it also seemed somewhat mediocre, primarily used by novice hunters as a training weapon. This was the first time she'd seen a 5-star hunter choose a one-handed sword as their primary weapon. Kevin glanced at the man's armor and nodded inwardly. It was a very standard male rat halo suit. He wondered if he hunted alone. If so, this guy was quite skilled even among 5-star hunters. Lin Lin stared at the man's face for 2 seconds, then turned to meet Rachel's gaze. They both saw the same meaning in each other's eyes. That's right, it was him. Tolo's attention was partially focused on the jumping man on the airship. He only caught the general outline of the brigade commander's story, understanding that he planned to resupply in Jianbua village before departing for somewhere across the sea. In response, he could only explain that he was just a hunter and didn't know much about trading supplies, so his say didn't count. He said that the Jianbua village chief would probably be back that evening, and until then, the brigade could stay in the village temporarily, wander around, and relax. The brigade commander wasn't surprised by this, and readily accepted the invitation. After he nodded, Tolo finally addressed his most pressing concern. Could I please speak with your group's hunters for a moment? I'd like to know why you were so reckless in allowing a monster to remain unrestrained on board. Tolo found this extremely strange. It might be said that the other hunters were clueless enough to allow such a dangerous situation to exist, yet the monster was captured and slept peacefully on the deck. But it must be said that the other hunters were skilled enough, so what was their reasoning for allowing it to sleep there? Upon hearing this, the leader's gaze shifted behind him, towards Lin Lin and Ez, who were standing together. Kevin and Rachel were hitchhikers, so they weren't considered hunters in the group. Lin Lin and Ez approached and greeted him. Brother Tolo, long time no see. Tolo stared at the hunter in heavy ice blue armor before him, briefly lost in thought. He searched his mind for a moment, but couldn't recall where he'd seen him before, until Lin Lin removed his helmet. Lin Lin. It's you? Tolo was utterly surprised. It's been a year since we last met at Lokrak. Lin Lin smiled and nodded. Yes, after the second battle against the Peak Dragon, I went to Yanhua village with Brave. This is Ez, my good partner, from Yanhua village. We formed a hunting group with Brave and Ziyuan. Tolo's gaze fell on Ez again. He couldn't tell the origin of the golden armor, but he could immediately recognize the material of the light brown insect staff. It was made of horned dragon material. To possess a horned dragon staff, Ez's strength must be at least 5-star. And since Lin Lin could be their good partner, his strength must be no less, at least 4-star. Thinking of this, Tolo was suddenly overwhelmed with emotion. He remembered that when they fought the Peak Dragon together, he had just been promoted to 3-star level. He didn't expect that after not seeing him for a year, he had actually risen at least 1 more star. With this rate of progress, it's no wonder the senior heavy crossbowman was willing to teach him. Just as he was thinking this, he saw a female hunter in a swift dragon suit among the opposing brigade waved and greeted him. Senior Rachel is here too. She's accompanying my master to Jianbua village. Our group is just picking up some people along the way. Lin Lin nodded toward the back. Look, that's my master, Kevin, the 7-star shield axe. His. Tolo gasped. 7-star. So impressive. He thought hunters of Senior Rickress's caliber were rare, but with such a formidable lineup, his fear of monsters awakening and causing chaos seemed like a non-issue. With 2 high-ranking hunters leading the charge, and Lin Lin and Ez supporting them, they could easily suppress the enemy. How about you? How have you been? Didn't you travel with Brother Todd earlier? Why haven't I seen him? After briefly explaining his situation, Lin Lin peered around. With Brother Todd's sturdy physique, he'd definitely be visible in the crowd. Me? Haha, not so bad. I've only gained 1 star in a year. As for Todd, we originally came to Jianbua village together, but half a year ago, he felt strong enough and returned to the Flacia Snow Mountains to seek revenge on that raging dragon. I don't know how long he stayed there. Chapter 442. Brother Todd went back to Pokai village to seek revenge on the Boom Dragon. Lin Lin nodded, not really surprised. After all, he had already suspected Brother Todd's identity from their previous encounters. If the game's plot unfolded, perhaps after defeating the Boom Dragon, he would have to face the threat of the Black and White Gods, Tyrannosaurus and Collapsed Dragon. I just wondered how much time had passed between them. Lin Lin quickly regained his composure, and turned to look at Tolo. By the way, the leader just said you seem to have something to discuss with us? Ah. Well? Tolo glanced at the 2 high-ranking hunters behind Lin Lin, paused, and then said, It's nothing really. I just wanted to remind you that it's best to impose some restraints on captured monsters, otherwise it'd be very troublesome once the anesthetic wears off. But now it seems I won't need to remind you. You must be aware of this. Lin Lin slowly clicked the button with a question mark. Capture? What capture? Didn't I capture a shattered dragon once in Nagili village? Then he noticed Tolo's constant glances back, and after a moment's pause, he suddenly realized. So you're talking about Tio Tio? It's okay, it's not some ignorant beast. It's my hunting partner, just like Feline. Now it was Tolo's turn to slowly form a question mark. What are you talking about? Is Jianbua village too far from the center of the continent, and I've been here too long and haven't kept up with the times? That shouldn't be the case. Water transportation is still very prosperous here. So what does "it's my hunting partner" mean? Or is this some special code? Toro couldn't understand it, but judging by the attitude of everyone on this boat, he didn't have to worry about that guy going on a killing spree once he woke up. I see. Despite not understanding anything, he crossed his arms and put on an expression that said, I completely understand. Then I'm relieved. Toro seamlessly changed the subject. While I love to catch up, you're guests from afar, so you should find a place to stay first. Toro turned and glanced at the surrounding houses, a hint of hesitation on his face. Jianbua village, due to its geographical location, enjoys convenient water transportation, with ships from all over the continent docking here. This has led to rapid development for this village, which has only been established for a few years, with new huts popping up like mushrooms after rain. However, most of these huts are already occupied. With the large number of people in the brigade, there's simply no way they could accommodate the vacant huts. We can't ask other villagers who have decided to settle in Jianbua village to give up their painstakingly built houses for them to stay in temporarily. Thankfully, Lin spoke up in time, allaying his concerns. We all have our own rooms on the ship, and this trip to Jianbua village is just a temporary stop, so there's no need to go to such lengths. My master and his friends plan to stay in Jianbua village for a while, but since they're both high-ranking hunters, they can simply contact the Hunter Guild for accommodations. Well, there should be a guild branch in Jianbua village, right? Tolo couldn't help but twitch his lips. Unfortunately, there's no such thing as a meeting place here. Jianbua village is a very young village. While it's developing rapidly, it's still quite small. The guild hasn't established a branch here yet, and most village affairs are decided by the village chief. But if it's just two of you, settling in shouldn't be a problem. The village chief has always believed that hunters are the primary driver of the village's development, so he's built several small cabins specifically for potential hunters. Shall I take you two seniors to see where we be staying? As he spoke, Tolo cast a probing glance at Kevin and Rachel, who were not far away. Kevin waved his hand gently. No, I'm going to look for Reese. He's been here for a while. You youngsters just chat. Don't worry about me. Rachel nudged Kevin's waist with a finger, a smile on her face, and nodded gently at Tolo. The Reese he's talking about is Rick Reese, the 7-star hunting flute master. I heard he came to Jianbua village before, right? Have you heard of him? So they knew Senior Rick Reese? Indeed, such high-ranking upper-level hunters are often brought together by various events. It's not surprising that they knew each other. I know him. Senior Rick Reese has been helping the village a lot lately, but... Toro pondered for a moment, then gave an awkward smile. It's just that he's not here right now, just like the village chief. It seems like something's going on. This? Kevin couldn't help but exchange a glance with Rachel before nodding. Well, I'm sorry to bother you. Toro's smile relaxed. No problem. Next, I show you around our village. Frankly, there wasn't much to see in Jianbua village. They already gotten a rough idea of the scenery from the sky, and the facilities here, such as the tavern, workshop, and hunter training ground, were all quite familiar to hunters. More interesting than all that was the sight of the hard-working villagers returning to their tasks after enjoying the hustle and bustle. After all, while they were sweating profusely, and their work didn't look easy, almost without exception, each one wore a satisfied smile. Brother Lin, why do they look so happy? Yeezy quietly tugged at Lin's hand. Well, maybe it's because if they build the village better now, they'd be able to enjoy more benefits in the future. With a future and hope, they can still smile despite their hard work. After all, no one will usurp the fruits of their labor or exploit their surplus value. The fruits of their work belong entirely to them. Yeezy was a little confused after hearing so many completely unfamiliar and incomprehensible words, but considering the context, he could somewhat understand them. Could anyone usurp the fruits of others' labor? Lin couldn't help but smile at Yeezy's somewhat naive question. Of course there are, but there aren't many such people in this world. Yeezy stared at Lin curiously. This world? Brother Lin, you're talking about other worlds. Those are things only in novels and storybooks. Lin thought for a moment and chuckled. Yes, I came from another world. I'm a time traveler. Yeezy couldn't help but burst out laughing, gently tapping Lin with his fist. You're so annoying, all you can do is joke. Just tell me if you're laughing or not. Jianbua village isn't very large, and a walk around it doesn't take long. Besides the lush palm trees near the edge of the dense forest, the only interesting thing about it is watching the villagers at work. However, this cursory tour was limited to a few hunters. The rest of the brigade felt they had gained a lot. For example, the blacksmith and Gemma burst into enthusiasm when they arrived at Jianbua village's weapons workshop. According to them, the old human woman in the workshop seemed to be a disciple of the legendary craftsman, the Dragon Master. It's said that the original ornaments, or beads, once embedded in armor, could not be removed without damaging them. The hot swappable process, which allows for instant replacement and removal, is the result of that woman's research. In response, Lin Lin and the other hunters simply lamented the magnificent and convenient creation. But for the blacksmith and Gemma, meeting the old woman was akin to a pilgrimage. Perhaps even more exciting would be meeting the old woman's master, the legendary dragon craftsman, in person. Soon, the sky darkened, and Lin Lin and the others arrived at the village tavern, ready to sample Jianbua village's specialties. Just as Lin Lin raised his oak wine glass, a sharp-looking dragon man, carrying a large, tough leather bag, approached, led by a villager. Seeing this, Tolo, who was introducing the characteristics of Jianbua village to a few people, immediately stood up and greeted him, "Village Chief." When the Jianbua village chief arrived, the brigade commander naturally stepped forward to negotiate. Lin Lin, on his side, would only occasionally glance over before continuing to eat and drink. He would then chat privately with Yi Zi and share with Tolo their experiences since their separation from Rocklac. Huh? That's the Jianbua village chief? So young. Yi Zi stared at the seemingly young Jianbua village chief with some shock. It wasn't surprising that she was surprised. After all, the dragon people were far fewer in number than pure humans, and of the dragon people she had met, besides the stunningly beautiful sister Hoya Shuiyun, the youngest was the head woman of Jieyun village. Besides the three mentioned above, most of the dragon people she encountered were either old men or old women. Especially in management positions, like village chief and guild president, with the exception of the head woman of Jieyun village, they were almost all without exception. Hotoyo Minoru looked much younger, but his figure had begun to shrink, indicating an old age. Meanwhile, people like Jieyun's alcoholic guild leader, Locklac's lecherous guild leader, Barbear's guild master, and Dondaruma's guild director were all elderly dragon people. "I'm sure he'd get along well with Jieyun's head woman," Yi whispered in Lin Lin's ear, lowering her voice. Lin Lin didn't think so. Although both were young dragon people, Jieyun's head woman had a naturally elegant aura of a noblewoman, while Jiang Bo's face was filled with a warm smile, radiating an optimistic and cheerful aura that seemed to infect others. Strictly speaking, the two had quite different styles. "I don't know, village chief Jianbua, but I remember there's a female scholar from the ancient dragon observatory who's quite good at drinking. She'd definitely get along well with the village chief." Lin Lin was certain of this, because during the last hero celebration in Jieyun village, he accidentally glimpsed a crimson-robed dragon woman sitting on the bench usually occupied by the village chief. The two chatted and drank, the atmosphere seeming quite harmonious. Later, Lin Lin did some research and learned that the village chief's friend had arrived with a fleet that departed from Jianbua village. Based on this, Lin Lin finally managed to locate her from his vague memories. She was a scholar from the ancient dragon observatory. In 2 days, the protagonist could compete in a drinking contest with her. If they won, she revealed some information about the ancient dragons. It's worth noting that the protagonist used a normal-sized wine glass, while the female scholar used a massive bowl that was barely enough for one person to hold. TSK, what an amazing alcohol tolerance. What are you talking about? Toro came closer curiously. I'm trying to guess who's younger, the Jianbua village chief or the Jieyun village chief. Lin Lin started talking. Yi Zi nudged him helplessly, and Lin Lin had to change his words. Well, I'm wondering if they could get along if they met. After all, we don't think we've ever seen another dragonoid village chief this young. I see. Toro took a sip of his beer and joined in the conversation. Come to think of it, I met the Jieyun village chief once before. It seemed like Jieyun village was holding some kind of celebration, and I went along to join in the fun. By the way, Lin Lin, I remember you're from Jieyun village, right? Did you attend that celebration? Then Toro noticed a subtle change in Lin Lin's expression, and Yi Zi, standing beside him, took a strange smile. Toro, ? What's that riddle? Lin Lin was about to speak when Yi Zi spoke first. Do you know what that celebration was for? Well, Toro pondered for a moment. It seems to be called a hero's celebration. In that case, it's probably because a hunter defeated a particularly powerful threat near the village, restoring peace and tranquility to the village. So, It was held to repel the threatening hunter? Yi Zi snapped his fingers and looked at Lin Lin with a hint of pride. That's right, but that's not enough. The one threatening the village was a powerful ancient dragon named Lan Long. Brother Lin Lin made a significant contribution in that battle. Lin Lin, His face flushed, a rare moment. What contribution? I was just lucky enough to survive, and it was all thanks to you and Master saving me. Chapter 443. So, you were the protagonists of that celebration? After gaining a general understanding of the Lingfeng incident, Tolo sighed with genuine emotion and gave Lin Lin a thumbs up. Awesome, brother. Ancient dragons are creatures that only the most elite hunters can handle. For a lower-ranked hunter to be caught up in the turmoil and face an ancient dragon head-on and escape unscathed is truly legendary, a feat truly admirable. It's a shame we left early that time. We were just there to watch the fun. If we'd known this would happen, Todd and I would have gone to have a drink with you. Yuzi rolled her eyes quietly. That wouldn't do. Brother Lin Lin was hanging out with her at the celebration. What would she do if you guys went to drink with him? Lin Lin, on the other hand, noticed another message in Tolo's words. Brother Todd. Tolo nodded. Yeah, didn't I say before that we came to Jiangbua village together, but then he ran back to the snowy mountains. I heard about the Jian village celebration, and we took a boat from Jiangbua village to that place together, and that's when we parted ways. Todd ran into someone he knew at the celebration. Well, the two who went to the hills outside the village to set off the fireworks. They seemed to be from Pokai village too. Todd chatted with them, and then decided to return to Pokai. He's always so impulsive. I missed the second half of the celebration because I wanted to see him off, Tolo said, shaking his head helplessly. He raised his glass to Lin Lin. Come on, cheers. Let's make up for the drinks we missed last time in Jian village. Lin Lin, cheers. Meanwhile, the head of Jiangbua village, who was conferring with the brigade commander, rubbed his unusually large nose and smiled broadly. A team traveling in pursuit of the truth? Wonderful. Although we're all travelers, the meaning of our journeys is different. What do you mean? To explore unknown lands, increase the number of bases, and facilitate mobility and communication, that's the meaning and mission of my travels. Jiangbua village was founded with this belief. Hearing this, the brigade commander's face was filled with admiration. Humanity's ability to survive in this perilous world and grow stronger is inseparable from the contributions of these great pioneers. However, the Jiangbua village chief suddenly paused, his smile fading slightly. Unfortunately, the area surrounding the village has been somewhat unstable recently, disrupting the gathering and transportation of supplies. Therefore, the fuel supply is also unstable, and you may need to stay a few days longer. The brigade commander had previously hinted that Kevin and Rachel were coming to Jiangbua village because something had happened. Upon hearing this, his curiosity was no longer suppressed, and he asked, what happened? Is it a monster rebellion? If so, perhaps our brigade can be of some assistance? The Jiangbua village chief sighed softly. This isn't a crisis that ordinary hunters can resolve. It's the work of an ancient dragon. Ancient dragon? The brigade commander's pupils shrank slightly at this. I see. Any ancient dragon would be worthy of such attention. To have two high-ranking hunters come all this way, it could only be an ancient dragon. Seeing the brigade commander's expression change, the Jiangbua village chief offered comfort. Don't worry. At this point, that creature doesn't pose a threat to the village. It's just that it's disturbing the surrounding ecosystem. As long as you don't leave the village, there won't be any major problems. The Jiangbua village chief smiled, turned his head to glance at the large whale docked in the center of the village, and suddenly changed the subject. By the way, I haven't asked you yet. You're stopping in Jiangbua village. Are you planning to cross the sea? If it's convenient, could you tell me where your next stop is? Is it the Fonglong area across the sea? What's inconvenient about that? Brigade commander. He smiled, took off his hat, and pulled out the pure white dragon scale hidden within. He generously displayed it to the Jiangbua village chief. Our next stop is Shichi country, across the sea. I heard there's a place called Zinade village there. Someone there might know the truth about this object. Zinade village? At these words, the Jiangbua village chief's eyes suddenly trembled for a moment, revealing an indescribable emotion. This emotion, upon seeing the dragon scale in the captain's hand, was instantly replaced by an even stronger one, causing his usually cheerful expression to slip into a rare moment of disbelief. The emotions were complex. The brigade commander could read from his expression alone, encompassing, but not limited to, shock, fear, bewilderment, and confusion. However, as the head of Jiangbua village, he had experienced many ups and downs. After his initial bout of loss of composure, he quickly regained his composure, though a touch of regret lingered in his tone. I never thought the legends would be true. The cycle of fate has begun to turn again. Upon hearing this, the brigade commander's heartbeat quickened. This, clearly, unlike the countless responses he received from past inquiries, such as "It's quite nice. What is it?" "I don't know," or "Maybe someone here knows." The Jiambwa village chief before him definitely knew about this thing. This was a complete surprise for the brigade commander. He assumed he had to gamble his luck, travel thousands of miles to a remote village in a foreign land, and perhaps even get the answer. But the surprise came so unexpectedly and suddenly, appearing before him without warning. "You know the origins of this thing, right? Please tell me. I've traveled the world for ages seeking this, and today I've finally found a clue." The Jiambwa village chief paused for a moment, then took the dragon scale from the brigade commander's hand and held it up to the torch overhead. The pure white scale reflected a beautiful, brilliant golden red light in the flames. After a while, the Jiambwa village chief sighed softly. "Actually, according to your original itinerary, you definitely find the final answer when you reach Zinard village." The brigade commander was stunned. Why did this sound like a riddle? But if you're truly itching to tell it, I can tell you a legend, an ancient ballad that's been circulating in Zinard village for thousands of years. The Jiambwa village chief cleared his throat and began to chant softly in an ancient, melodious voice. The unique rhythm not only caught the brigade commander's attention, but also the gazes of several hunters busy eating nearby. The Jiambwa village chief's expression was solemn, his eyes slightly closed, as if he were chanting not some ancient ballad, but a fragment of a distant and ancient history. "Darkness awakens, light is born over there. The earth sprouts, shadows emerge here. Light shines upon countless, darkness returns to the earth. When the light returns, a new shadow will be born. When the shadow returns to the earth, a new life awaits. Let us reincarnate together, light and shadow. Let us reincarnate forever, light and shadow. Transform into the same song. Reincarnate to the sky, return. Reincarnate to time, return." The Jiambwa village chief slowly trailed off, and just when everyone thought the ballad had ended, they realized he had simply adjusted it. He took a breath, then opened his mouth again, chanting the second half of the ballad. "When the soul awakens, life will be born there. When the heart awakens, will be born here. The soul embraces all. Countless wills transform into power. When life returns to the soul, a new will is born. The immortal will returns to the soul, waiting for the new breath of life. Heart and life reincarnate together. Heart and life reincarnate forever. Transformed into the same song. Returning together, singing the song. Souls and wills that live together." Finally, the ballad ceased. The village chief of Jiambwa village still stood there, his expression gradually calming down from the solemnity he had shown during the chant. He opened his eyes, looked at the crowd mired in silence, and smiled softly. "Well, the song is over. The answer you seek lies within. Sorry, I've been busy out all day. I'm a little tired. Please make yourselves at ease. We see you tomorrow." The brigade commander was lost in the rhythm of the song, frowning as he carefully considered the message and symbolic meaning of each word. Suddenly, he was awakened by the words and quickly said, "Wait a moment. Can I ask how you know all this?" The Jiambwa village chief slowly turned his head, his gaze gazing far eastward. "Because Zinard village is my hometown." He paused, then turned to the brigade commander. "By the way, if possible, could you please deliver a letter to the village's head abbot? A letter from a wanderer to his family back home?" The brigade commander nodded vigorously. "No problem." The Jiambwa village chief smiled gratefully, then waved goodbye to everyone. I never thought such a song existed in the village chief's hometown. After a moment's silence, Tolo subconsciously rubbed his arms. "This song has a soul-stirring thrill that gives me goosebumps. But what exactly do the words in the song mean?" Yeezy rested his chin on his hand, pondering. "It feels so hazy, but I can tell it's a story about reincarnation." "So, does reincarnation really exist in this world?" Lin Lin put down his glass and leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed on the Isana in the distance, shrouded in the night. The black-clad dragon aboard stretched itself. After a day's sleep, it was finally getting up. "I'm afraid this cycle of reincarnation isn't quite the same as your understanding." "Huh?" Yeezy was stunned. "Brother Lin Lin, you seem to understand a lot. Tell us now." Lin Lin's mouth twitched. "I'm more of a materialist. Things like life and death and reincarnation are impossible to prove, so the reincarnation in the ballad must be some kind of metaphor." TSK. Yeezy curled his lips in disappointment. "If you're really curious, you find out once you get to Zinard village." Didn't the village chief Jiangbo just say that in Zinard village, we'd definitely find the answer? Maybe even witness it with our own eyes? The hunters were busy discussing among themselves, but the brigade commander didn't join in. Instead, he pulled out a small notebook and wrote down the lyrics he had just heard, word for word, preparing to take them back to his room to ponder them carefully. The truth he had been pursuing so hard was about to be unveiled before his eyes. If he didn't figure it out quickly, he feared he wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. Just as the brigade commander left, clutching his notebook, a burly man in yellow-brown armor with blue stripes burst into the tavern, loudly demanding food and drinks. Judging by the reaction of the waitress, the man seemed irregular. "Mr. Rickles, why are you back so late today? Have you made any progress in the investigation of that ancient dragon?" The girl, named Patty, approached the burly man, menu in hand. The burly man removed his helmet and placed it on the table, revealing a shiny bald head. Without even glancing at the others in the tavern, he casually addressed the young girl. "No, that guy's a real problem. How can we make any progress so easily? We ran into a group of acquaintances in East Dorma. Following the guild's orders, we're chasing a black eclipse dragon. While its head-on damage isn't as strong as that of the steel dragon, the damage it can cause is just as great." This frightened the young girl, causing her face to pale. "Huh? We haven't even driven off that ancient dragon yet, and here comes something even more troublesome?" The bald man finally realized that there seemed to be some ambiguity in his words, leading the young girl to misunderstand. He quickly waved his hand. "No, that black eclipse dragon was trying to get into the dense forest, but the steel dragon drove it off. From what Julius and the others said, it must have fled to the more distant native forest. Don't worry, the dense forest will keep it out of our way." The girl's face lit up with realization. "So, it seems the terrible storm the day before yesterday was caused by the battle between the steel dragon and the black dragon?" Then, curiously, the girl inquired, "What does that black dragon look like?" The bald man waved his hand. "How would I know? I haven't seen it myself." Facing Petty's slightly disappointed gaze, the bald man paused, then changed the subject. "But Julius and the others shared some information with me, and I have a general idea. It seems to have 4 legs and 2 wings, completely black, without eyes, and its wings are covered in thick, hair-like scales, like tassels." As the bald man spoke, he noticed that with every word he spoke, the girl in green's expression grew increasingly peculiar. Finally, unable to resist, he paused and asked, "What's wrong? You look so strange." The girl asked him, "When you came back, did you see an airship parked in the center of the village?" The burly man was slightly startled. I think so. I didn't really notice. There were travelers in the village again?" The girl asked again, "Then you certainly didn't notice the deck of that ship either?" "Yeah, what's wrong? If your description is correct, the person sleeping on the deck of that ship in the center of the village is probably a black eclipse dragon." "Huh?" Chapter 444. The burly man instinctively wanted to get up and go back to the airship for a closer look, but before he could take 2 steps, he heard a familiar voice. "All right, no need to look, it's real." The burly man paused, turning in disbelief in the direction of the voice. Kevin waved his glass at him. "Fuck. Kevin? Why are you here?" Rachel ignored said, You better not have seen me." "Huh? Rachel's here too?" Seeing Rachel's expression turn sour, Rickres quickly scooped up the helmet on the table, holding his glass. He took a few steps to sit next to Kevin and said with a smile, "Sorry, but you know, with your ability to conceal your presence and that velociraptor suit, it's really hard to notice at first glance." Rickres clinked his glasses with Kevin and asked curiously, "So how did you get here?" Rachel glanced at Kevin. "This isn't his injury. It's almost time. Want to stretch your legs? You mentioned earlier that there was a major problem here, so we came here." Hearing this, Rickles couldn't help but roll his eyes. "Come on, this is an ancient dragon. The steel dragon Kuzradora. Why not stretch your legs and find a Ceratopsian blackhorn? You've barely recovered from your injury, and you're already trying to risk your life again?" Kevin simply smiled and teased, "Even ancient dragons have their differences. I've read a lot of reports, and it seems the storm dragon storm is even more powerful than the steel dragons, right?" The implication was that the storm dragon, a more dangerous one than the steel dragon, couldn't kill me, so how could I possibly be afraid of the steel dragon? In comparison, Rachel seemed much more serious. "A few years ago, a steel dragon attacked Donnarumma. You weren't there then, but I participated in the city's defense, so I have some experience dealing with steel dragons. If a repulsive battle is decided, I could be of some help. Since its founding, Donnarumma has been favored by the ancient dragons, facing threats almost every once in a while. It's said that this is due to its unique geographical location, which coincides with the intersection of their multi-decade migration routes. Old mountain dragons, fence crabs, steel dragons. All of these creatures have visited Donnarumma more than once. Their frequent visits necessitated the construction of Donnarumma's dedicated battle street. Ah, you really are. Riklas shook his head helplessly, tilted his head back, gulped down the wine in his glass, and then slammed the glass down on the table. Thanks. Honestly, he'd been under quite a bit of pressure lately. He'd been conducting his explorations with great caution and nerves. As the only high-ranking hunter currently in Jiangbua village, he was terrified that a single mistake could lead to the entire group's annihilation. Kevin and Rachel's arrival from afar undoubtedly helped alleviate some of his stress. By the way, Riklas let out a long sigh. What's with that black erosion dragon you just mentioned in the village? Here's what's going on. Having just heard some very interesting news, Lin quietly approached his master's table and quickly spoke up. Rick, is Lin here too? Lin, Kevin, Rachel, Facing the speechless gazes of the three, Riklas scratched his head awkwardly and muttered softly, I just saw you too, and was so excited that I wasn't paying much attention to my surroundings. Lin had no choice but to explain that airship belongs to our brigade. Master and the others came here on our airship this time. Riklas had known Tayo back in Jian village, so there was no need to elaborate on the previous details. Lin focused on what happened after he transformed into a black dragon. Finally, with Riklas's expression in a state of bewilderment, Lin asked the question he had been wanting to ask since the beginning. Have we already contacted Julius? We've fought twice against the Black Eclipse dragon they're pursuing, Senior C. I just heard you mention meeting Senior Julius and his companions in the dense forest. Could you please elaborate on that? Suddenly hearing of the Black Eclipse dragon, already showing signs of transformation, Lin felt a surge of murderous intent. Tayo was thriving. If they could defeat that pioneer whose progress bar was nearly full, perhaps they could catch up and claim the throne of the heavenly dragon. Also, although Lin never expressed it, he harbored a lingering worry. After receiving nourishment from the Great Elder, Tayo had been growing rapidly recently. If they didn't clear the obstacles ahead of time, if he got stuck just before completing his transformation, it would be disastrous. The Chaos Black Eclipse dragon's brief remaining life was far too hopeless. There was no solution other than to end its suffering sooner. Lin absolutely did not want to see Tayo end up like that. Riklas didn't know what Lin was thinking. After a moment's reflection, he decided there was nothing to hide, so he spoke directly. Strictly speaking, I encountered them at the border of the dense forest, between the virgin forest and the dense forest. The black dragon was originally trying to migrate to the dense forest, but a steel dragon already existed there. A fight ensued, and the steel dragon drove the black dragon away. According to our analysis, the black dragon's most likely destination is the adjacent virgin forest. But, he looked at Lin, whose face shone with a hint of murderous intent, hesitated for a moment, then said, You're not planning to go over and kill the black dragon yourself, are you? Seeing Lin's silence, tacitly agreeing, Riklas gritted his teeth. Julius and the others have already pursued it. I believe they'd be able to kill it soon. Going there would be a wasted trip. Is there any point? Lin lowered his eyes, staring at the wood grain of the tabletop, his mind replaying the plot of the 4-game series. In the game, the 4th-generation protagonist first encountered the Black Eclipse dragon at sea, which led to a shipwreck and drifting to the warm ocean island. The elite hunter team then failed to defeat the Black Eclipse dragon in the unknown forest, trapping Aiden and Fabius there. Fortunately, the 4th-generation protagonist came to their rescue. After rescuing them, the guild immediately handed the task of defeating the Black Eclipse dragon to the 4th-generation protagonist, who successfully defeated it. However, the Black Eclipse dragon defeated by the protagonist did not die. In the gap between the protagonist's departure and the arrival of the scribes who arrived to examine the corpse, the dragon successfully broke free from its old body, evolved into a new form, and sat on the throne of the Tenkai dragon. Although the events had deviated significantly from the original game plot, the general thrust remained unchanged. The possibility that the pursued Black Eclipse dragon had feigned its own death, taking advantage of the opportunity to complete its transformation, was not entirely negligible. Lin felt compelled to go and take a look. If this scenario truly occurred, he might still have a chance to seal the lid on this guy's coffin. Okay. Seeing Lin's determination, Riklas didn't try to dissuade him. After all, the boy was Kevin's disciple, not his own. Didn't Kevin have any objections? Besides, the boy was already a 5-star hunter, likely destined for a higher rank within a few years. He had his own judgment and was responsible for his decisions, so there was no need for him to dissuade him. He simply reminded him, if you want to go, remember to find another excuse. The Black Eclipse Dragon subjugation mission is full. 5-man hunts aren't exactly easy. Don't worry, Senior Rickles. I understand this. The next day, Sophia woke from her slumber, stretched, and smiled gently at the sleeping little dragon beside her. She stood up, ready to open the door and get some breakfast. But as she did, she was met by someone standing like a wall blocking the doorway. The man's hand, raised to knock, froze for a moment, then he casually put it behind his back. Ahem, good morning, Sophia. Sophia glanced back at the still drowsy little dragon. Worried about waking him, she sidled out of the room, closing the door behind her. Then, she looked up at Lin Lin. Tell me, what's up? Lin Lin coughed dryly. What's that? Can't I just come and chat with you, if I have nothing else to do? Sophia rolled her eyes secretly. Come on, you want to chat? Why come to me? Shouldn't you be looking for Yeezy? Lin Lin's face flushed, and without making excuses, he got straight to the point. I wanted to see if there were any commissions for the Virgin Forest. Sophia, ? She tilted her head. If I remember correctly, we're just stopping in Jianbua village for a while, right? Once we've restocked our supplies, we go to Zinard village, right? Where do you find the time to take on commissions? Lin Lin rubbed his chin, pondering for a moment. He couldn't come up with a good excuse. He couldn't say he was going to the Virgin Forest just to kill the guy who might hold the answer to his journey's end, could he? You know, right? Jianbua village is currently facing ecological unrest caused by the steel dragon, and our supply chain is severely hampered. We have to stay here longer than expected. Sophia frowned in embarrassment. How many more days can it possibly last? 1-2 days? Anyway, we won't stay more than a week, right? There's a dense forest between the native forest and Jianbua village. Crossing it directly would involve countless powerful monsters. We could bypass it by water, but it would take quite a while. A round trip, wouldn't it take at least a week? Well, Lin Lin pointed overhead. This was the interior of the Isana. Above him was the Isana's deck, and right now, the Isana's deck was Tayo Tayo's personal sleeping bed. You want to fly over there on Tayo Tayo? Sophia understood, and was silent for a moment. If that was the case, maybe they still have time. It's okay, Sophia, we're not in a hurry to leave. Suddenly, the door to a cabin a little further away opened, and the unshaven, sleepy-looking band leader emerged. He looked tired, but his eyes blazed with excitement. He looked like he hadn't slept much all night, probably poring over the notebook with the lyrics written down. We can find some clues to the answers we seek here, so there's no need to rush to Zinard village. The brigade commander glanced at Sophia and spoke slowly. We should give our hunter some freedom. He must have his reasons for wanting to take on the commission in the native forest. He pulled out his notebook and waved it at Sophia. It just so happens that I have something I'd like to consult with the Jianbua village chief about. It's okay for him to stay in Jianbua village for a while. In fact, the decision to stay temporarily wasn't made arbitrarily by the brigade commander, but rather a comprehensive consideration of the opinions of all members. He wanted to learn more about the legend and ballad from the Jianbua village chief. The blacksmith and Gemma were envious of the Jianbua village craftsmen, and were eager to exchange their forging skills. The dragon merchants, seeing the commercial potential of Jianbua village's developed maritime transport, were eager to visit the docks to thoroughly investigate and select a fleet of their choice for investment. The cat chef was also very interested in some of Jianbua village's unique local ingredients and wanted to try creating new dishes. As for Sophia, she was perfectly content to just be with the little dragon, Bomb, and didn't care whether she stayed in Jianbua village for long or not. Since the brigade commander had said so, Sophia no longer had anything to worry about. She simply nodded and said, "That's fine. I ask around for you, and see if there's any suitable commissions for you. By the way, are you going alone, or with Yezi, Yazanialu, and the others?" Lin Lin thought for a moment and smiled. "Although I kind of want to go alone, after thinking it over, it's safer to go together." Sophia glanced at Lin Lin suspiciously. Safety? Why did she sound like she was going to challenge some powerful monster? Hey, it's against guild rules to subjugate monsters that aren't your hunting targets. Calm down. Lin Lin waved his hand, indicating that he understood the situation, and there was no need for further explanation. Sophia then left the Isana, and went to the village to see if there were any commissions from the villagers that could be edited into quests. But after a thorough search, she found nothing. Jeonbwa village wasn't as small as Nagili village. While not particularly large, it did have a commission wall where everyone's requests were recorded. It was managed by a girl named Petty, adopted by the village chief. Everyone had already developed a habit of posting their requests directly on the commission wall, so Sophia's efforts were naturally in vain. Desperate, Sophia went to the commission wall and carefully examined it. "Sister, are you looking for a commission? Tell me what you need." Chapter 445. A young girl with chestnut hair appeared beside Sophia. Turning, Sophia noticed she looked remarkably familiar. She was wearing a uniform that had a distinctly waitress-like feel, with only the fluffy, pale green skirt punctuating her youthful energy. Of course, it was natural that she looked familiar. After all, she had been working as a waitress at the same bar where Lin Lin and the others were staying the previous night. "Are you Petty?" Sophia turned to look at her, her words a question, but her tone affirmative. Although she had left the tavern early after following Lin Lin and the others to take care of Bao Bao yesterday, and had only ever glanced at her from a distance, she had heard her name several times during her previous visits. This girl was something of a prominent figure in the village, and everyone knew something about her life. Like Sunshine Aiden, Petty was an orphan. Her birthplace was once completely destroyed by an unidentified monster, and she happened to be out picking mushrooms that day when she lost her way and became the sole survivor. If the Jeonbwa village chief hadn't happened to pass by the ancient forest and encountered Petty, who had been lost, tired, and hungry, it wouldn't have been long before the small village was completely wiped out. The Jeonbwa village chief had intended to return the child to the village and continue his journey. However, after 2 detours, he finally found Petty's village, only to find it in ruins, with collapsed houses and crumbled buildings, as if ravaged by something. Every living thing had vanished, even the herbivorous dragon-shaped birds they kept. Leaving such a young girl alone in this situation would have been tantamount to watching her die. In desperation, the Jeonbwa village chief took Petty on a journey. A few years later, passing through this area, he was attracted by Jeonbwa village's location and established the village there. Despite this nightmarish childhood experience, the Jeonbwa village chief's meticulous care and concern helped her gradually recover from the trauma and regain her optimism and cheerfulness. However, even after emerging from the trauma, the experience did not completely leave her without any impact. She placed her complete emotional trust in the Jeonbwa village chief, and in the village he had painstakingly built. It can be said that her love for Jeonbwa village was even deeper than that of the chief himself. Driven by this deep love, Petty spared no effort for the development of Jeonbwa village, working 3 jobs day and night. During the day, she served as the village's image maker, managing the wall of commissions in front of Sophia. In her free time, she went to the village port to help with procurement and inventory. At night, she served as a waitress at the tavern. She treated everyone in Jeonbwa village with kindness and equality. "Yes, I'm Petty. Sister, you were the receptionist responsible for the handover between the group and the guild yesterday, right?" So impressive. Looking at Petty, who gazed at her with a bright smile, Sophia couldn't help but sigh inwardly. After such a tragic experience, she managed to remain strong and smile. It was truly remarkable. A mixture of heartache and admiration surged within her, suppressing the strange feeling of a guild-certified professional image girl needing to ask this amateur village image girl for advice. She smiled and said, "It's nothing special. With Jeonbwa village's current rate of development, it won't be long before the guild establishes a branch here. And by then, you, who have been working as a village image girl for a long time, will surely receive the guild's professional certification." Sophia's words made Petty's smile grow even wider. It wasn't the last part about the guild's professional certification, but the first part about the guild establishing a branch in Jeonbwa village. This meant that the villagers' hard work was recognized. As the founding father, who had participated in building the village from scratch, if such a scene really happened, she would naturally be proud. "Thank you, sister." Petty thanked her sweetly, then asked about the purpose of the commission wall she had come to see. Are there any commissions in the native forest?" "Native forest? Please wait, I look for it. I remember I just sorted through the commission information yesterday. It should be done soon." After all, without professional training, she had to rely on her own understanding of many techniques. She was a bit flustered for a moment, and it took her 2 minutes to find one among the pile of commissions. "How about this?" Sophia gazed, and saw 5 stars lined up in a row. Hunting mission, Heavyweight Empress. Mission, hunt a heavy armored beetle. Submission, hunt a thorn beetle. Reward, 13,900, main mission, 5,000, submission, processing fee, 1,000. Mission location, native forest. Time limit, 30 days. Client: a quirky businessman with a sudden inspiration. Ha ha ha. I've come up with another brilliant money-making idea. I heard sandals made from thorn beetles are a new fashion trend among desert women, so I immediately posted a bunch of thorn beetle hunting quests. But after careful consideration, I realized that if I want to win in the business competition, I can't just follow the trend. So hunter, go and help me hunt a heavy armored beetle. Sandals made from heavy armored beetles will definitely outshine those thorn beetle sandals. Ha ha ha. Sophia glanced at the commission with a strange look. Why did she feel like the client wasn't quite right? Accepting a mission like this wouldn't be a problem, right? Petty seemed to have guessed Sophia's thoughts and quickly explained, although the client's mental state might be a little. Well, I've carefully verified it, and he can indeed afford the reward. Furthermore, the armored merchant said that if this mission could help him win the business competition, he'd be willing to establish a supply channel for Darren beer with Jianbua village. Petty paused, letting out an embarrassed smile. It seemed as if she had suddenly realized that the person before her wasn't a resident of Jianbua village. A mission like this, which would greatly benefit the village upon completion, wasn't particularly special to them. But for Sophia, confirming the mission itself was flawless was enough. As long as the target wasn't shady, and the client could afford the reward, there was nothing she couldn't accept. Besides, neither Sophia nor Lin Lin were the type to be jealous of others' success. Since completing the mission could also help the village's development, there was no reason to refuse. Well, while this was just Sophia's conclusion based on her interactions with Lin Lin and the others, it was basically spot on. Except for the fact that this client was a bit unusual. When Sophia approached Lin Lin with several mission documents targeting the primeval forest, he immediately noticed the heavy beetle mission documents. If he remembered correctly, the heavy beetle armor seemed to provide artillery skill buffs. That would be a significant boost for his grenade bottle shield axe. However, after pulling out the receipt and carefully examining it, Lin Lin's eyes involuntarily lingered on the first line of the client's message. The series of uncanny lo-ha-ha-ha sounds elicited an inexplicable sense of déjà vu. Seeing Lin Lin's interest in the heavy beetle hunting mission, Sophia relayed the information she gathered from Petty. If he'd been skeptical before, then hearing the words Master Beer confirmed it. If my guess is correct, the armor the merchant is wearing should be a black belt suit, right? Ghost Instructor, it's been a long time since we last saw each other. During the last Ling Feng rebellion, he had already left Jiyan. One time, while traveling between the hunting grounds and their base, he heard that the instructor, transporting a batch of cheap raw materials, had encountered pirates and suffered a significant loss. Later, the pirates were annihilated by a sea dragon, and the loot had sunk into the sea, making it virtually impossible to salvage. I originally thought the instructor was on the verge of bankruptcy, but looking at the description of this mission, it seems he can still pull it off. I'm not sure. Patty met the client, so she probably doesn't recognize the black belt suit, right? Lin Lin waved his hand. Never mind. It doesn't matter. Even if the client can't afford the reward, I take the mission. This transformed ice shark suit I'm wearing is getting a bit too old. It's time for a new set of armor. The order for the armored dragon armor is still waiting at the blacksmiths. The armored dragon armor is more defensive, while the heavy beetle armor's artillery protection is more offensive. Having both sets made will allow for more flexibility depending on the monsters we face. Since he had already received the commission and had a legitimate reason to go, Lin Lin didn't want to waste time. He went straight to EZ and climbed onto Tiao Tiao's back, carrying Jujube and Nia Lu. As Tiao Tiao spread his wings, a dark shadow shot into the sky like a sharp arrow. Some Jianbua villagers, who happened to look up, only saw something flash before their eyes. A closer look revealed only a tiny black speck. From Jianbua village to the native forest, a large expanse of dense forest separated them. Although it was possible to fly directly across, Lin Lin chose not to do so. He hadn't forgotten that Jianbua village was currently in the thick of a 2-DOS plot. The steel dragon was still lingering in the depths of the dense forest, undefeated. He was swaggering through the center. What if the dragon saw them, and took it as a provocation, unleashing a storm and engaging them in a direct fight? Although he and EZ, combined with Tiao Tiao's full strength, could confidently defend themselves even if they encountered the steel dragon, forcing a fight in a completely unnecessary battle would be a sheer waste of time and energy, with the potential for injury. So, Lin Lin cautiously chose to skirt the edge of the dense forest. It was essentially the same route as the sea route to the primary forest, but flying was much faster than sailing. In about a day, Tiao Tiao had carried them through the dense, rainforest-like jungle, officially entering the primary forest. Wow! The scenery here is truly beautiful. Even the colors seem so much brighter than in the dense forest. Tayo Tayo landed at a shallow section of the turquoise river to rest and recover, while Yezi surveyed her surroundings with curiosity, a look of wonder in her eyes. Indeed, this river's water is almost as deep as an underground volcano. No, it's the underground river in the cave before the magma. Over there, it's the minerals brought by the lava that give it that bright blue color. Why is this side so blue? Lin Lin stepped into the water and found it was barely ankle deep. The ground beneath the surface felt solid, not like river mud at all, but more like rock. It should be seawater, right? Date dipped its paw in the water, then brought it to its lips and licked it twice. Yes, it's salty, meow. Lin Lin crossed his arms, looking up at the faintly visible sea in the distance. But isn't the blue of the sea due to depth and refractive index? The water's so shallow right here, it shouldn't be. Brother Lin Lin, how do you know all this? Isn't this something only scholars study? Lin Lin, Ahem, can I say that we discussed this on a whim when I was hunting ghost frogs last time with Sophia? Let's take a look at the cobalt morpho butterfly in the distance family. Boss, look! There are so many butterflies flying in the woods over there. Sparkling blue, like the river reflected in the sky, meow. Nyala tugged at Yezi's calf and pointed. That's a cobalt morpho butterfly. A very common creature. It's common, but there are too many of them here. Date folded its arms, feeling a bit strange. Back when it and Lin Lin were training for aerial flight, they often ventured into the forest with their capture nets. Even then, the weather was still quite warm, and they hadn't seen such a large number of cobalt morpho butterflies. Now, at the end of the cold season, how could this spectacle, which should only occur during the breeding season, appear? Could it be that the last Tyrannosaurus appearance ravaged the ecosystem, leading to a decrease in the number of creatures? Maybe it's because we're near the sea, where the native forest is less susceptible to heat and cold. Lin Lin wanted to check the temperature, but the excellent insulation of his transformed ice shark suit prevented him from detecting any abnormality. The same was true for Yi. Wearing a special amulet that provided dual cold and heat resistance, she felt at home in any environment. Chapter 446. Lin Lin Yi, protected from heat and cold, was almost completely unaffected by temperature fluctuations. However, with Yeza and Nialu by his side, Nialu buried her face in the water. After 2 seconds, she looked up again, shaking off the water droplets clinging to her fur. She said confidently, "That's right, meow. This area is much warmer, meow. The water is warm, so comfortable, meow." To sense it more accurately, it deliberately used its most sensitive nose to touch the river water. After entering the native forest, the water temperature here was at least 4 or 5 degrees higher than that in Jianghua village. Lin Lin was stunned. This was odd. They were both near the sea, separated only by a dense forest. How could the temperature difference be so great? Could it be geothermal heat? But he remembered there weren't any volcanoes in the native forest. But anyway, this is a pretty safe place. I think we can set up a temporary camp here. What do you think, Brother Lin? The fact that there were such a large number of cobalt morpho butterflies active, and if you looked closely, you could even spot 4-leaf mayflies nearby, proved that this place was indeed quite safe. The only thing to keep in mind when setting up camp here was to make sure it was waterproof and not flooded. Lin Lin naturally had no objection. Soon, Lin Lin and his group set up camp. While resting and eating to replenish their energy, they discussed their next plan of action. Should we start by searching for the Black Eclipse Dragon? Lin Lin turned to look at Tayo Tayo. Do you have any sense of that creature? Tayo Tayo scratched his smooth head with his winged claws and growled helplessly. Black Eclipse dragons all have the ability to sense scale powder, so they can often sense each other's existence. Previously in the unknown forest, the reason why Tiao Tiao was able to land accurately in the center of the battlefield between Lin Lin and the others, and the Black Eclipse Dragon after fighting with the Thousand-Blade Dragon was partly due to this reason. However, a black dragon's sensing abilities are limited. Unlike the Sky Dragon that appeared in the dawn, if a black dragon were to escape the range of his scale powder and pursue directly from Sky Mountain to Elbert's Fortress Plateau, black dragons must be within a certain range for sensing to work. Seeing Tayo Tayo's reaction, Lin Lin couldn't help but spread his hands. I only know that Senior Julius and his team have reached the Virgin Forest, but I don't have any more detailed clues. The Virgin Forest is so vast, it's impossible to start searching in a short time. Let's start by searching for the heavy beetle. Wild black dragons aren't like Tayo Tayo, who can only rely on spreading scale powder to gather information about their surroundings. As long as it's within the Virgin Forest, we definitely find it. Yeezy naturally had no objection and fully agreed. However, Nialu raised a question, Then where should we start looking for the heavy beetle? The black dragon is nowhere to be found, and the heavy beetle. Are bugs really that easy to find? You don't even know that, Meow? Date hugged his shoulders, a hint of triumph on his face. Forget it, Meow. After all, you haven't been training as a hunting cat for very long, so it's understandable that you're unfamiliar with monsters like the heavy beetle. These monsters can't fly, and they primarily burrow and crawl. So where heavy beetles move, they definitely leave behind very obvious dents and digging marks. Also, while heavy beetles are powerful and have excellent defenses, speed isn't their strong point. So, compared to other large carnivorous monsters, heavy beetles don't hunt as frequently. They're scavengers. And, Meow, heavy beetles are almost always accompanied by thorough beetles. If you can find traces of thorough beetles, heavy beetles are probably not far away. Listening to Coconut Date's clear and well-reasoned assessment, Nia Lu's eyes gleamed with admiration, twinkling like stars as she stared at Coconut Date. Senior Coconut Date is amazing. Coconut Date seemed quite pleased with the compliment, even feeling a bit elated. Hee, just average, Meow. If you work hard, you can be as amazing as me someday. Of course, it wouldn't reveal that it had only been after Lin Lin had retrieved the axe beetle, Gujia, that it had specifically researched the extensive ecological data on beetle species. For example, the food habits mentioned earlier were something they had researched together when Lin Lin was preparing Gujia's nutritious meals. Lin Lin, stare. Sensing Lin Lin's gaze, Coconut Date guiltily averted his gaze and changed the subject. Now that we have a direction, shouldn't we also set out to search for the heavy beetle, Meow? Lin Lin waved his hand. You guys go ahead, Tayo Tayo, and I will catch up later. They were able to establish this makeshift camp thanks to Tayo Tayo carrying a large amount of supplies. But that didn't include Tayo Tayo's own rations. They could rely on the food they carried to replenish their energy, but Tayo Tayo was still hungry. Although the snacks fed by the Great Elder provided a considerable amount of energy, after consulting Sophia, she was advised to eat normally when it was time to eat. This would maximize the effect of the dragon jades he swallowed and use them to strengthen Tayo Tayo himself, rather than using them up in daily activities. With Tayo Tayo's current size and appetite, he could eat at least a whole marabird or a herbivorous dragon in one meal. He couldn't carry that much dry food, so Lin Lin had to take Tayo Tayo with him to the hunting grounds. Limited by Tayo Tayo's lost vision, Lin Lin had to accompany him on every hunt. However, the cooperation between rider and monster was still very efficient. Tayo Tayo carried Lin Lin into the sky. Lin Lin, based on his experience, determined where the raw meat would be. Once Tayo Tayo was airborne, he provided visual reconnaissance and target lock, and Tayo Tayo swooped down to deliver a precise kill. The whole process took less than 10 minutes, and Tayo Tayo had already pinned a dewlap dragon firmly to the ground. By now, they had already left the densely wooded area bordering the dense forest. They now lay in a nearly unobstructed wetland plain. The sky was a brilliant blue, and the distant peaks glowed emerald green under the sunlight. Lakes and puddles were scattered everywhere, and various herbivorous species leisurely basked in the sunlight, grazing on the emerald green weed sprouting from the pools. This fertile and habitable environment had attracted a large number of flamingos to settle here, helping them survive the harsh cold season. Of course, this was the scene before he and Tayo Tayo arrived. After Tayo Tayo swooped down from the sky and slapped the spotted drake to death, the other drakes finally reacted, scrambling to their feet and scurrying off into the distance in panic. The flamingos that had nested and bred there also took flight in flocks, escaping the area in the commotion. Lin Lin looked at the originally peaceful and tranquil place, and saw that its tranquility was broken. He suddenly felt a subtle sense of guilt in his heart. If he had known earlier, he would have simply flown deeper inside. This ancient forest was lush and green, and there must be a lot of raw meat inside. Never mind. It's only this one trip to the primeval forest, so it won't cause much of a stir. As Tayo Tayo devoured the flesh of the weeping dragon, enjoying his meal, Lin Lin shifted his attention and carefully examined the mountain range ahead. As he did so, a subtle shift in his gaze gradually occurred. I hadn't looked closely from the sky before, but now, from this angle, it felt as if the arrangement of those sword-like peaks seemed off. It was as if they weren't rocks, but the remains of an enormous monster after its death. Once this thought arose, it lingered in Lin Lin's mind. The more he looked, the more he felt that those cliffs covered in moss, vines, and trees were actually the ribs of a massive monster. If this were true, the owner of this skeleton would have likely reached a staggering size of tens of thousands of meters in life. Compared to it, the peak dragon and the Haoshan dragon pale in comparison. Even the molten mountain dragon seems dwarfed. Even the 2-kilometer-long serpent king dragon, buried in the Miasma Valley, seemed like a spicy snack compared to it. Lin Lin's astonished gaze lingered for a long time, lingering on the outline of the primeval forest. He remembered that before his time travel, he had stumbled upon a monster hunter dub. The creator, inspired by Panga's creation of the world, had designed a massive ancient dragon called Tian Chuanglong, a giant ecosystem and continent in its own right. If the owner of this skeleton were still alive, perhaps it would be similar to the creator's Tian Chuanglong. After a long moment of sighing, Lin Lin's gaze suddenly shifted slightly, turning to gaze at the sky behind him, then looking forward again. 2 seconds later, he turned his head again, then straightened up again. It wasn't an illusion. The peak of the primeval forest was indeed shrouded in a cloud, and the cloud was confined to the vicinity of the peak. The surrounding sky was a clear, azure blue. What a strange climate! Pulling out his binoculars, Lin Lin carefully examined the dense cloud for a moment. Between the thick layers of cloud, he could faintly see arcs of electricity flickering, but it persisted around the peak, and no raindrops fell. Lin Lin pondered for a moment, finally digging up some memories from the corners of his memory. When he used to play the game, it seemed that every time the monsters went to sleep in Area 8, the screen would dim. Although he hadn't paid much attention, he imagined it was similar to the scene he saw now, with the thunderclouds gathering and lingering. For a moment, Lin Lin was stunned, yet also filled with intense curiosity. He wondered if Sophia could figure out the underlying mechanism of this phenomenon, or even the identity of the skeleton's owner. Who? A sudden nudge against his butt caused Lin Lin to stumble. He looked back, only to find that Tayo Tayo had already eaten and drunk his fill. Feeling Lin Lin's gaze, Tayo Tayo tilted his head innocently. Who? Don't blame me. I whispered to you several times, and you didn't respond, so I nudged you with my head. Hiss. So fast? Lin Lin rubbed his butt, and involuntarily turned his head again, to glance at the outline of the native forest. He quickly realized it wasn't Tayo Tayo eating too fast, but rather that he had been staring blankly for too long. Okay, let's go. Let's catch up with Yi Zi and the others. Huh? Aiden sat on the ground, panting heavily. He stuck his one-handed sword into the dirt nearby. He fished out a candy pill wrapped in oil paper from his pocket, peeled off the wrapper, popped it into his mouth, and began to chew vigorously. As the sweet candy shell cracked, the sticky liquid inside poured into his mouth. Feeling the fishy taste and the sweet sugary flavor blend and spread on his tongue, Aiden frowned. He took another sip from the water bag at his waist, then swallowed it. As the candy pill entered his stomach, his pale face suddenly became a little rosy, and his breath was no longer as weak as before. Aiden slowly exhaled. Huh? Director, when will you improve this pill? This tastes indescribable. The one you handed us was clearly the improved second-generation antidote. Who told you to chew it up? Wouldn't it be fine if you just swallowed it? Nadia cradled her heavy crossbow, wiping the gunpowder from the muzzle as she complained to Aiden. I was thinking of chewing it up and swallowing it, so it absorbs faster. Aiden scratched his tangled hair. The faster it absorbs, the quicker the detoxification effect takes effect. Phew. This mad dragon disease infection is really unpleasant. I wonder how Lin Lin manages to withstand it. Julius, who was diligently polishing his swords, replied without looking up. The director also brought a lot of new information when he delivered the antidote. I took a look, and it mentioned that the symptoms of mad dragon virus infection can sometimes vary significantly between different subjects. Perhaps his symptoms are different from ours? The top team was responsible for pursuing and subduing the Black Dragon from Ba. Since their separation from Elbear, they've been tracking the Black Dragon's footsteps, finally engaging it in a clash not long ago. As for the outcome, once the Black Dragon scale powder was released, all 4 members of the top team were infected with the Dragon Madness, their combat effectiveness reduced by at least half. Facing the Black Dragon's attack, they were in imminent danger. Although they had previously learned from Lin Lin that explosive attacks could stimulate the body's metabolism and allow the immune system to temporarily suppress the Dragon Madness virus, this risky approach didn't suit Julius and his team's habit of fighting according to pre-planned battles. Therefore, after each of them took a pill of the elimination fruit to suppress the virus's symptoms, they temporarily retreated. But since we've already been infected once, everyone should have adapted to the virus's onset, right? And according to the director, our bodies have developed a certain resistance, so the time it takes to relapse after another infection won't be as short as before. Next battle, we finish it off. Chapter 447. Thanks to Lin Lin's help, the guild had acquired a wealth of information about the Black Eclipse Dragon ahead of time, and the original plot scenario of the top team's disastrous defeat upon their first encounter with the Black Eclipse Dragon never occurred. Despite their initial discomfort with the weakening symptoms of the Mad Dragon virus, they successfully escaped the Black Eclipse Dragon and, after a brief rest, prepared to launch a decisive battle against it. As the top team geared up and set out again, Lin Lin and his team finally discovered a clue while searching for the heavy beetle. Found it. Look here. Niala's talent for investigation was truly undeniable. She was the first to discover a subtle trace, attracting Lin Lin and the others. She walked over to the patch of soil covered with few dead leaves, knelt down, and carefully pinched it. It didn't clump, but crumbled easily, indicating it was very dry. She then parted the leaf-covered area to the side, revealing a noticeably more moist soil. That's right, they're traces of excavation, but they're not very fresh. They must have been left there at least 2 or 3 days ago. There are many monsters that dig holes though, so we can't be sure it's just the heavy beetle. Let's search around and see if we can find any other traces. They had now officially entered the native forest. Before them lay the raised, winding tree trunks, connecting the ground to a platform of intertwined vines above. From this point, they could clearly see the rough rock face of the surrounding mountain, and the massive, cracked skeleton embedded within it, only half exposed. To say it was embedded might not be entirely accurate, as there was a high probability that the skeleton was much older than the rock it encased. "Boss, come and look at this meow." Suddenly, Yezo's voice called from above. Lin Lin looked up, and saw that Yezo had somehow climbed onto the vine-woven platform overhead. "What's wrong? Did you find another trace?" Lin Lin glanced at the vines dangling from the platform. Instead of climbing, he released his insect and leaped onto the platform. However, what he saw wasn't the expected traces of heavy beetles, but a vast, chaotic mass of brown-red graffiti. The graffiti was quite chaotic, with various incomprehensible symbols interwoven. After a long examination, Lin Lin could only make out a single cat paw print. However, one thing was certain. It was the mark of a wild Elu cat from the native forest. Of course, it could also be from the Melila tribe, but it certainly wasn't from the Chimian tribe, whose graffiti style was much wilder than this. Lin Lin turned to look at Yazao, who nodded confidently and pointed to a low cave beneath the graffiti. "Boss, there's a wild Elu clan here, meow." Can you understand these symbols?" Yezo scratched his head sheepishly. "I can only roughly understand them, meow. Many of the symbols are ambiguous, and there are quite a few differences in the details, meow. However, some of them are the same as the characters we normally use, meow. So, I can confirm that this is a wild Elu clan, meow. Want to go check it out, meow? As locals, they're definitely more informed than we are. Maybe they have news on the heavy beetle and the black dragon, meow." Lin Lin thought what Yeza said made sense, so he squatted down to examine the low cave. After comparing it, he felt like he could squeeze through if he could, so he turned back and said hello to Yezi. "Who?" Tayo flapped his wings and approached, trying to force his head through the hole. Lin Lin shoved him away, his face furious. "You can't squeeze in, and even if you did, you'd probably scare the cats here. Just wait outside for me to come out." Tayo tried again to squeeze his head into the hole, but finding it impossible, he gave up. He draped his 2 winged paws in front of him and rested his head on them, then lay down. Lin Lin shook his head helplessly, turned around, and went into the cave with Yeza. As for Tayo, he felt relieved that Yezi was watching over him outside. The cave entrance was narrow and low, and Lin Lin struggled to squeeze through. Only the exit proved difficult. 2 more steps later, the passage became much wider. As if startled by the sound of Lin Lin's movements, several gecko-like creatures on the dim rock wall left a cloud of fluorescent smoke, their bodies taking the opportunity to scurry away. In the dim light of the fluorescent smoke, Lin Lin could see the same reddish-brown graffiti on the rock wall as on the rocks outside, as well as very obvious chiseling marks. This passage within the rocky mountain had actually been excavated, even if it wasn't excavated from scratch. Simply widening an already narrow crevice to its current size would have been a considerable amount of work for a phalanx. It's hard to imagine how a group of tiny creatures, averaging just over a meter tall, could have wielded crude bone pickaxes to gradually carve out a tunnel over 2 meters high. Lin Lin took a quick look around and began to walk forward. This passage, carved into the rocky mountain, was long and narrow, interconnected, and quite complex. It was Jujubu, by identifying the graffiti on the rock wall, led Lin Lin deeper and deeper. As they walked, a faint light shone ahead. The bright sunlight contrasted starkly with the fluorescent light in the cave. Lin Lin knew that after walking for about 10 minutes, they had finally found their destination. At that moment, Lin Lin couldn't help but recall the following sentence. "At first, it's very narrow, but only just wide enough for one person to pass. After a few dozen steps, it suddenly opens up. The land is flat, with neat houses, fertile fields, beautiful ponds, mulberry trees, and bamboo. Of course, strictly speaking, what Lin Lin saw before him was quite different from the description, but the overall impression was the same. The felin's lair didn't have any fertile fields, beautiful ponds, mulberry trees, or bamboo. It was secluded, and the sunlight filtering through the shade of the trees was quite gentle. Here, a vast number of gigantic mushrooms grew. Their unique spores slowly ascended on the warm air currents, illuminating them in the soft glow like swarms of dancing lightning bugs. The tools, stored food, and miscellaneous items crafted by the wild fae were piled up in small piles atop these enormous mushrooms. It seemed as if each giant mushroom was a home for a wild fae. However, just as Lin Lin was about to approach and greet the local fae, he discovered that this supposedly peaceful habitat had welcomed an uninvited guest. A monster with peach-colored fur, the limbs of an orangutan, and the head of a hippopotamus. Peach-haired Beast King. This mushroom-loving creature, perhaps drawn to the fragrant aroma of the abundant mushrooms, had intruded from nowhere into the home of the fae cats. Completely ignoring the resistance of the weaker fae cats, he sat on the ground in the center, wantonly nibbling on the freshest mushrooms. Lin Lin blinked, stunned for a moment. He felt a faint sense of déjà vu. But he quickly dismissed the strange familiarity. Undoubtedly, this was the moment when the fae cats needed help most. Lin Lin, clutching his kinsect, charged towards the peach-haired Beast King. At the same time, Lin Lin also noticed, with keen eyes, that among the staggering group of wild fae cats, a calico cat, seemingly still in good health, could no longer contain its rage at the peach-haired Beast King for destroying its home. Grabbing a rough-boned pickaxe, it charged forward, determined to teach the intruder a lesson it would never forget. Although this Elu's movements were slower than Lin Lin's, who was moving with his kinsik, it was closer to the peach-fur Beast King, and had already started earlier. So, just as it rushed behind the peach-fur Beast King, Lin Lin had also just dropped from the sky, and both attacked the peach-fur Beast King almost simultaneously. Then, the peach-fur Beast King, seemingly strutting around with impunity, treating the swarm of wild Elu like nothing, suddenly raised its rear. Seeing this, Lin Lin's pupils constricted, and he instinctively tried to release his kinsik behind him, pulling himself away. Alas, just as he had used the two kinsik to help him cross the 20+ meters behind the peach-fur Beast King, both kinsik were temporarily fatigued and hadn't yet recovered the strength to bear Lin Lin's weight. Lin Lin could only watch in despair as a thick, brown-yellow gas rushed towards him, nearly enveloping him completely. Also engulfed in the gas was the three-flowered Elu that had charged with him earlier. However, Lin Lin, clad in heavy armor and carrying a shield axe on his back, only stumbled back slightly under the impact of the blast. The three-flowered Elu was sent flying by the powerful force, bouncing on the ground like a ping-pong ball before crashing into a giant, resilient mushroom. Ugh! Despite holding his breath and the heavy armor blocking the air, Lin Lin could still sense a strong, foul odor creeping up his nostrils and into his trachea. The stench was so revolting it resembled an old septic tank that had exploded under excessive pressure, then mixed with the swollen corpses of rats from the sewers and stuffed into the belly of a bloated whale, where it fermented for 49 days. Maggots wriggled within the soft, rotting white flesh, and under the constant heat of 40 degrees Celsius, a sticky corpse oil oozed out, its stench tinged with a hint of sweetness. Lin Lin couldn't help but nearly vomit into his helmet, but his strong willpower kept the cramps in his stomach under control. Compared to this smell, the hand-rubbed fertilizer jade he experienced before, and the pungent stench of wild monster lairs, pale in comparison. The peach-haired Beast King turned his head and gazed at the heavily armored figure behind him, faintly coated in a layer of feces yellow. His eyes narrowed slightly, and a mocking roar of laughter escaped from his hippopotamus-like mouth. It stretched out a claw and reached behind its rear end. From this movement, it was clear it was planning a snowball fight. "Hold on, boss. I have the deodorizing jade here. I kill you." Lin Lin didn't wait for Yezhao to toss the deodorizing jade. After suppressing the urge to vomit with supreme willpower, his pupils dilated slightly, and a dense mass of dark purple bloodshot veins crept into his eyes. His face, hidden beneath the helmet, flushed crimson from the rapid flow of blood. At this moment, his metabolic rate reached an all-time high. Even the stubborn mad dragon virus that had been lingering in his body was instantly refined by his immune system, returning the vital energy that had long been entrenched and devouring Lin Lin's body. The chi flowing through Lin Lin's body became stronger than ever before, and even his muscles, under the influence of this chi, became as strong as rock. Peach-haired Beast King, challenger triggered. The peach-haired Beast King sensed something was amiss, but couldn't quite place the source of this vague sense of danger, slowing his pace to ditch his feces. In the brief moment of hesitation, Lin Lin stamped his feet and swiftly charged towards the peach-haired Beast King. The distance between them was already short, and with Lin Lin's charge, the peach-haired Beast King hadn't even reacted before he was already in front of it. Lin Lin didn't reach for the shield axe behind him. Instead, he pushed his legs against the ground, using one of the peach-haired Beast King's front paws for leverage. He leaped in front of the peach-haired Beast King, and as its bewildered expression gradually turned to panic, he delivered a punch. Bang! Compared to the peach-haired Beast King's head, Lin Lin's fist was barely larger than one of its tusks. But the moment it made contact, the peach-haired Beast King felt like it had been struck by a heavy hammer. Its entire body instantly lifted off the ground, and it toppled over to the other side, blood splattering as a thick, gray-white tusk emanated. With one blow, the peach-haired Beast King collapsed to the ground, his eyes dazed and dazed. He seemed completely stunned, forgetting even to struggle to his feet. But the peach-haired Beast King was stunned. Lin Lin's rage was still at Promax level, and one punch wasn't enough to quench his anger. Lin Lin leaped onto the peach-haired Beast King's body, staring down at his cross-eyed eyes. Without hesitation, he struck him again. This time, Lin Lin unleashed a barrage of powerful punches, left and right, aimed at the peach-haired Beast King's head. His blows, like a golden lion possessed, sent blood splattering from the peach-haired Beast King's head and face, shattering fangs and shattering teeth. As if awakened by the intense pain, the peach-haired Beast King finally reacted. Panicked, it stretched out its claws, grabbed Lin Lin, who was riding on it, and, taking advantage of the moment when Lin Lin raised his fist, flung him away. Then, without even a glance at the flung figure, it struggled to stand again, trying to get away from the terrifying creature. As a result, it didn't see the figure release a kinsect the moment it was flung, pulling itself back down. As the peach-haired Beast King rose, it landed right in front of the long, pink-haired tail, as flexible as an arm. Without a second thought, Lin Lin raised his hand and grasped the long tail. Then, exerting force with his legs, he sunk almost half his foot into the ground to stabilize his position. Following this, he tightened his core, unleashing all his strength, and began to spin. He yanked the tail hard, lifting the peach-haired Beast King's 10-plus-ton body off the ground, swinging it like a windmill in the air, the sound of breaking wind whistling incessantly. Die! Under the centrifugal force, the peach-haired Beast King offered no resistance at all, only enduring the tearing pain at the base of the tail. After being swung several times, it slammed heavily into the nearby rock.